Hello and welcome to Purely Academic, your potentially educational podcast. This is the monthly stuff for December 2025. I'm Dr. Jonathan Lack. I write about movies. I teach cinema studies at the University of Colorado, and I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year.
And I'm Sean Chapman, high school English teacher by day, otaku by night, and up here on my mountain looking down at all of you people having fun with Christmas, I think I just had an idea. A wonderful, awful idea.
Indeed. This is kind of the Christmas episode. It's December. We do have a monthly 10 for you that is all Christmas themed, and Sean does include some Grinch stuff, so you will be happy. And it's very dumb. It's very fun. I was tasked with the monthly 10 this month, and it's going to be a good one. And then I'll be challenging you for January. In the news, we have stuff like the end of Hollywood, the end of PC gaming, some cool Star Wars news, and then in the stuff we've got all sorts of video games, including Kirby Air Riders, Metroid Prime 4, Super Robot Wars Y, Digimon Storytime Stranger. It is going to be a jam-packed, fun episode. We have brought lots of podcast gifts under the podcast tree.
Yes. So some of them are the gifts you really want, like fun video games, and then some of them are the gifts you don't want, which is like the existential crisis of modern capitalism.
Indeed, that is where we are. That is a good description of 2025 in general. This year has sucked. I am in the middle of finishing my grading for the fall semester. I've got one class worth of grading, sort of half left to finish as we're recording this. So this is my fun procrastination for the day. This semester, Sean, man, I haven't talked about it on the podcast yet because I really can't. I was considering just recording with you, Sean, like a segment where I do a tell-all about this semester at CU Boulder, and then we put it in the vault until I work somewhere else, because, my God, this has been the semester from hell. Not because of anyone I work with in my department who are lovely, other forces, some student stuff. This has been this has felt like the semester where I got like jumped into things in the most brutal way possible, and I really need a break, I gotta say.
Yeah. I think I've in a similar place. Like for my work stuff, it is there's been a lot of turnover of like top level people, not just at my school, but in the broader district, that has caused a lot of kerfuffle. And then yes, there is some student shit there's some wild shit that like it's like I could not possibly talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I was going to say, let's cheer ourselves up by moving on to the news, but that will not cheer us up. So before we move on to the news, Sean, I'll do one fun thing. I did a survey on my final exam in Intro to Film of which films they liked most and liked least, and I just thought you would enjoy this, Sean. The number one pick by a full-on 4-1 margin, 4 more people voted for this than anything else. The favorite film of my class was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I taught for editing. And that just made me happy, because that's just with a bullet now. I can keep that every fucking semester. I think that rocks.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's a long movie, but it's a crowd pleaser of a movie. I think my impression is always that like younger people are very resistant to movies that are like super long, like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But once you get into it, you're like, fuck yeah. It's like you never want it to end. It's so good.
Yes, absolutely. And I've got some even more good stuff planned for that next semester, because I just got the 4K set from Arrow Video in the UK. And that set, Sean, has a whopping 6 cuts of the movie on it. And I teach this film for editing, so I want to go in and like compare some of that, show some of the, because I show them the US theatrical cut, which is generally considered the most definitive version of the film, because it's the last one Leone cut himself. It is the shortest version, and it's very tight and good. And I can't fit the extended cut of the film into a 3-hour block because it's slightly longer. But I can show them some of those scenes maybe the next day and talk about how would this have changed the movie. But I want to compare and contrast, because what Arrow did is they basically reconstructed all the possible versions that were shown in Italy, because there was the premiere version, Leone tinkered with it after that, there were like competing cuts out there, and so that's fun, and I'm excited to get to teach that one again. Also, part of why I showed that movie is we have in the lecture hall that I teach in for that class, our screen is an anamorphic widescreen, like scope widescreen, giant wall-to-wall enormous screen, like bigger than most movie theater screen. And so Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is like one of the ultimate widescreen productions of all time, just looks phenomenal at that size. Like, it's a different movie when you get to see it at scale.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely just like an all-time great. And it's good to know that, the kids still have taste.
Well, kind of. The least favorite movie was Citizen Kane. And so they don't have... And I'll tell you, Sean, the worst comment I got was someone said, Citizen Kane, and this is a slight paraphrase, but only slight. They said, because it was black and white and old. And that was the comment. And that was, I will say, that person was unusually honest. The other comments, if you read between the lines, were always, it was black and white and old. People would try to be like, it was long, it was kind of slow, which I'm like, it's not either. Citizen Kane is 2 hours long, and this is not slow. It's not a slow movie. You guys have no fucking idea what slow means if you think Citizen Kane is slow. Anyway, but that bummed me out a little bit, but I'm not taking Citizen Kane off. You can pry that off my syllabus from my cold dead hands, fuckers.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of that is they have never seen a movie made in the 1940s before. They
definitely haven't. Yeah. I mean, they've grown up in an era where streaming services, the oldest possible movie that is on there is like 1985, right? No, you know what? Oldest possible would be 1977, because that's the year Star Wars came out. That is the oldest possible movie you would get on most streaming services.
So I guess it sort of makes sense that if they have literally never been exposed to a black and white movie before, that it would be hard for them to get past some biases. I'm sure they will get over it in due time.
Well, indeed, and you know what? It's Citizen Kane, so they're gonna have to watch it again if they're film majors.
Yes.
Because me and another professor in the department who teaches some of the other required courses, we do get together and compare syllabuses and just make sure we're not doing too much overlap or that it's complementary. And the one where we don't care about that is Citizen Kane. We're just we're both teaching it. They can watch it twice. It's fine. There's no worry about that. And I think that's good. I think that's, you know what? Some things are part of the canon for a reason, and I'm not resisting it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I feel about a lot of the English literature world as well. It's sometimes it's no, it's we could do the most dangerous game. I don't give a shit. Let's do it. It's really good. We've been doing it forever for a reason. It's because it's rad. So let's keep doing it.
It's rad, and I assume in that case, Sean, it prompts great discussions. The students are interested in it. That's why. It's because it's teachable.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And, my number one criteria for selecting a story for 14-year-olds is somebody has to die in it. If there's not a death, they're not going to care. There has to be someone has to fucking die. It is truly if you wanted to make a graph of the interest level on texts and you put if you mapped it out, you would see very clearly, is someone brutally murdered in this story? Yes, they're way fucking into it. No, they don't give a shit. And that's why they like Romeo and Juliet. All said and done, they'll bitch and moan about it at first. They get way into it. Every year they get way into it as soon as people start getting fucking murdered, and then they love it.
Yeah, you know what? Makes sense. This is Martin Scorsese has built his whole career on this.
Exactly.
You just gotta let people die. Speaking of letting things die, Hollywood. Let's move on to the news.
What's going on in the news, Jonathan?
The end of a lot of things, I think. So, all right, let's lay out the facts and then we'll talk about what this means. Netflix, last week, we're recording this on Sunday, December 14th, last week won an auction to buy Warner Brothers for $83 billion in enterprise value. It's $72 billion in equity value. If you're wondering, you may have seen those two different figures, but that is because this is an offer that is a mix of cash and stocks. This would give them control of the Warner Brothers division specifically, including the movie studio, HBO/HBO Max, and other related assets like game studios. The Discovery half of Warner Brothers Discovery is intended to be spun off before the deal closes, so Netflix would not gain control of Discovery, CNN, TNT, basically all the non-cable, paid cable networks that WBD owns. However, Paramount Skydance, the latest mega merger, wants to mega merge even more. Their offer was rejected by the WBD board, and they have launched a hostile takeover attempt offering Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders $30 per share for an all-cash offering of $108 billion. And Paramount does want everything, including CNN, so that they can do to it what they did to CBS. Recall that Skydance is chaired by the Ellison family, who are big Trump fluffers, and installed Barry Weiss as the head of CBS. So this is honestly less because they want the CBS/CNN business than this is how they know they get Trump on board, is to create more Fox Newses. No matter how this shakes out, this would be the biggest Hollywood acquisition of all time, narrowly edging out the Disney/Fox acquisition of $71 billion from last decade. And, this news came out on Thursday, and I went into one of my classes, and my students immediately asked me about it and said, well, what do you think about the Disney Fox news? And I said, conservatively, not Disney Fox, sorry, the Netflix Warner Brothers news. And I said, conservatively, I think this is an apocalyptic scenario for Hollywood. And my joke is conservatively like, well, then what's worse than that? I'm like, we don't know. But I think this is an apocalyptic scenario for Hollywood. And the thing is, of those two options, Netflix and Paramount, Netflix is by far the least bad of those two. So like, oh, we're fucked. Oh, we're so fucked.
Yeah, it is just like, it feels like we are at that kind of terminal stage with the acquisitions where it's just like, well, it's like you can't, at a certain point, you can't do it anymore because there's nobody left to acquire. Like, it's all, and it feels like, the movie industry is just like a step in front of the video game industry in this regard. That's like the video game industry is about one acquisition away from being in this position where you're like, well, then what's left? Like, what are we doing here? The thing with like the Netflix one is that also it's Netflix has no interest or care for the theatrical and like the traditional movie business, right? So if they get their hands on it, that's that out the window. But then Paramount obviously is the like more monopolistic of the two choices. It's just like, what the fuck? Like it is just like there's just this. I'm with you that there's a cataclysmic feel to it, where it just feels like everything is kind of closing down, and we're approaching that like 1980 cyberpunk future of the mega corporation that just owns everything.
I mean, and talking about which is more monopolistic, it actually depends on how you look at it. Because you could argue the Netflix thing is definitely more monopolistic for streaming. Because Netflix is the number one streamer in the US, in the world. They would be buying the number 3 streamer, which is HBO Max.
Oh, sure, so, yes. I didn't even think about the HBO Max thing. That's right. They would just take out that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, they might keep HBO Max as a service, but they would own both of them. So they would own the number 1 and the number 3. So that would be monopolistic there. The Paramount thing would be monopolistic in a different way in terms of like the amount of IP they would own, the amount of catalog assets. Like the difference is that Netflix does not have a catalog the same way Paramount has a catalog. So that is less monopolistic there, but it's dire. The whole Netflix thing with theaters, I think like what you said, Sean, is accurate that they have no interest in theaters, but I would actually say it goes further than that. They are actively hostile towards theaters. Like Netflix wants to drive movie theaters as a business out of business. This is not a conspiracy theory that I am spewing. This is something that like the CEO of Netflix has said, that they view theaters as the competition. So like, even though they could make way more money than they are currently making by putting their movies in wide theatrical release. Like we saw this a couple years ago with the second Knives Out movie Glass Onion, which they allowed to play for 1 week wide, and it made a ton of money. And if it had played, the normal length of time in theaters, would have made hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. But they specifically cut it off after 1 week, and they even said it's because we view theaters as the competition. And so now the third Knives Out movie is out, and it played a little longer, but in many, many fewer theaters. And so the whole goal of Netflix is they don't buy movies to make money on movies. They buy movies to starve theaters of inventory and make sure that, like, okay, theaters aren't going to get new Guillermo del Toro movies. They're not going to get new David Fincher movies. They're not going to get new Rian Johnson movies. And if they buy enough, then theaters will be driven out of business and people will come to Netflix. Like, that is their long game. And while they have said they intend to keep Warner Brothers movies in theaters for a while, wink, wink, we know what their plan is. And so that feels to me like the saddest, most apocalyptic possible outcome of this. But then the Paramount thing is also awful, in part because of the Trump connections there. I mean, we're rapidly approaching the point where there will be no corporate media that is not Trump controlled, which is terrifying. I mean, this is the exact play of like Viktor Orban's Hungary, which is just to buy up or bully all the media into submission. So there's that. And then just in general, like the other part of this that is just, if you have a historical view, you know, one of the things you learn about in film history is the Paramount Decree of 1948, which is a famous Supreme Court decision that has since been overturned by the current terrible conservative Roberts Court, but that was only recently. But the 1948 Paramount Decree had stood until the 2020s that basically ended vertical integration. So pre-1948, studios not only owned and made their movies, but then they would also own or have stakes in the theaters, and they could control what those theaters showed and didn't show. And the 48 Decree broke that, and so ever since, like in all of our lifetimes, the expectation has been that movie theaters are effectively a free marketplace. They are not owned by the people making the movies. They show anything that is like within their, you know, guidelines and values and whatnot. Like, you know, a lot of theaters won't show like NC-17 stuff, but whatever. But they will show everything, and you go to pick your theater chain, and you're not directly rewarding the studio in that same way. And we have seen the gradual erosion of that because now, like, everything is so vertically integrated when you think about it. Like, what Netflix's business model is of producing their own stuff and putting it only on their own service, that would have been illegal 30 years ago. It should, like, under, like, current antitrust law, it should technically be illegal. It's just not fucking enforced. And so we are heading back towards a mass vertical integration period, and we're going to need a second Paramount Decree at some point to break this. Now, how the hell we would ever get there, I have no idea at this point. I mean, stack the Supreme Court with real justices. That'd be good. I'm not going to say liberal justices, just real ones, like ones who know the law and stuff.
Yeah, ones that don't accept bribes and, you know, that kind of shit. You know, the shit that people who are actually qualified to do their job, which is unfortunately just like the bare minimum of what we can hope for at this point.
Yeah, it just so happens we only have 3 of those people on the court, and they're liberals. But them being liberal isn't necessarily what makes that the case. It's just, you know, it's are you qualified to do the fucking job or not? And we have a very corrupt Supreme Court. We have a lot of corruption, and so yeah, this is where it just feels like, man, a world where Netflix owns all of Warner Brothers is. I mean, the other part of this, though, is that they can't do a worse job than David Zaslav has been doing. Yeah. Like, I do fully believe that Netflix would, like, care more about these assets than because Zaslav's whole regime, and this is very clear now, is he was just preparing a sale. Like, the last 3 years have been him trying to run down the debt enough that he could get in a position to sell and make money, hence why he never cared about any of Warner Brothers' actual, like, legacy assets like the Looney Tunes and stuff. I could imagine Netflix actually making hay on that because they have a big, like, division for kids on their service and stuff like that. So they're not going to do fucking worse than Zaslav. But yeah, the possibility of the Paramount merger is also terrifying. It's just dark times for Hollywood. I don't... It's already been dark. The Disney-Fox merger was a huge blow to competition. It massively sunk the number of movies getting released every year. This will sink that number even more. We're in a tailspin. This is end-stage capitalism. It's bad.
Yeah, there's just like this sense of like that it feels like it's all accelerating, you know, because it's like the Warner Brothers Discovery thing was not all that long ago. And just this sense of these companies consolidating things and just like fucking passing them around. And it's that just sense of that nobody has a care for the actual thing anymore. You know, that it's like, it's so the product that they're making of film and TV has been so abstracted from the corporate perspective that it just doesn't fucking matter. And that's where you are in this weird position, as I said, where it's like Netflix. If Netflix was just interested in making money, they would make way more money by incorporating the movies into the existing movie theater system, adopt like the multi-layered methods of getting income. They'd be much more heavily invested in doing physical media stuff rather than it feeling like, you know, someone like Guillermo del Toro has to like, you know, pry open their like fucking morbid hands to get a like Blu-ray release of a movie he's made, you know, that kind of shit. But there's just no interest in like being a good, regularly functional business. That's just not a thing anymore. Instead, it's all this like weird speculative, you know, accelerated growth, you know, fucking get people to invest in hopes and dreams bullshit. That is what motivates all modern high-level corporations. And that's where you get the sense of these companies just being passed around like fucking, betting tokens at a fucking casino, basically. It's really gross.
Right, because also, like, this level of money is just, it's fake. It's made up. It's just made up money. It's complete bullshit. It's rules that nobody else gets to play by. And it's also, we are so inured to this, Sean. I and you are old enough to remember, like, 15 years ago when Facebook bought WhatsApp, and I believe that acquisition was in the range of $18 billion. That was news for weeks, like, because of the number. Like, that was a crazy high number for a tech acquisition. Like, it was historic. 18 billion seemed insane. And now we're routinely getting these 80 billion, $100 billion mergers, and no one bats a fucking eye and pretends it's normal. And it's not normal. It just isn't. It can't be allowed to be normal.
Yeah, and it's just like it is just so obvious that the end game of this like whole strategy is just, it's scorch and burn. Like there's nothing left. Yeah. It's like that like there's no healthy long-term economy, no healthy long-term market that can exist under those conditions. But the people who run these companies don't give a shit because they'll get their money anyways. They don't care about the long-term health of the business. They don't care about like having like respect and prestige and those kinds of things that it felt like motivated big business people in the past, that like they wanted to be seen in a certain light. They wanted to be seen as like respectable members of upper class society that like were the movers and the shakers of the world. They don't give a shit about that anymore. And it's just, it fucking sucks.
It fucking sucks. And again, just to put a finer point on why within these two terrible options, Netflix is the better option in thinking of competition. One big reason for that is that, and Paramount has even said this, if Paramount gets Warner Brothers, there will be many more layoffs. The industry would be much smaller with a Paramount-Warner Brothers merger because Paramount already owns a movie studio.
Yeah, and so they don't kind of company.
Yes, it's the same kind of company. Netflix doesn't own a movie studio. They don't own a backlot. They don't own all that stuff. So they would still need most of those people. Paramount would not need most of those people. They would massively downsize, and the industry would just shrink in a way that, like, at least the Netflix thing would result in not as many jobs lost, which is, nice. It would be better if Warner Brothers was just its own fucking company, but we're not there. So, yeah, this sucks.
Yeah, and then there's like the one like little asterisk and all this that also is like weird to think about when you're in the video game world is like what happens with like Mortal Kombat and
right.
like all this the developers at Warner Brothers Games that that division has had a rough go of it where like Mortal Kombat is the only thing they have going that's been successful for quite a bit here. But there's like a lot of classic video game properties in several like classic video game developer studios that still work under WB Games. And neither Netflix nor Paramount give a shit about that. And I'm really curious, like what happens? Like what happens to those studios? Do they keep them around? Do they try to sell them? Do they just fucking shut them off and say, yeah, go home. We don't give a shit. Maybe we'll make a Mortal Kombat movie one day. But, we don't need more Mortal Kombat games because it just doesn't matter to the kind of business they make. I'm like really curious what happens there because I can't imagine it will work out for the best for the people working under the Warner Brother Games division.
Oh, I mean, the best case scenario is probably that whoever wins this tries to spin them off and sell them. But I think that the most likely is it just gets shut down. I think it all goes away.
Yeah,
I think, and maybe some of the licenses like Mortal Kombat get sold off, but like the problem here is that and Netflix has worked on game stuff before. The problem is there is no way for them to integrate video games into their platform, and their pure single goal is vertical integration. So like even though there would be a lot of money in just keeping WB games going and selling new Mortal Kombat games on PlayStations and Switches and Xboxes, they don't want that. That's not their company, so they're going to shut it down. Paramount could potentially do something with it, but I doubt it there too. My guess is Netflix would just shut all that down and use it as a write-off, and Paramount might sell it, but I don't think either of them would keep it around.
Yeah, and it's, I imagine both of them would have the attitude that feels like all these companies have with IP, which is like, well, we just want, like, they don't want to sell the IP. even if they're never going to do anything with it, like, well, we got to keep it. Like, because what if one day we do want to do something with it, even though we're never going to do anything with it, right? It's like that. Recently, there was the whole thing with the Perfect Dark game that Microsoft canceled, and then there's this whole story about Take-Two like wanting to try to pick it up and like pick up the development of that game and keep it going, but that ultimately that fell out because Microsoft didn't want to sell the IP. But it's like, well, why are you keeping the fucking IP if you're gonna cancel the game that uses your IP? Like, be honest with yourself, Xbox, you're never fucking going to do it. If you couldn't get this game made, you're never going to do something with this thing. I'm sure everyone there knows that, but they still never want to sell it. It's like, just always feels like it's a fucking miracle. Like when Square Enix sold the Hitman IP back to IO after IO went independent, it was like, holy shit. It's like, that shit never happens. So it's just like, it just would feel so crazy if this was the thing for the video game world that just kills Mortal Kombat and NetherRealm Studios. NetherRealm, which has been like a major development studio that's been in play for over 30 years at this point. It's like it feels like it's really at a hugely high risk of just being shut down because it's just a weird thing on the side in these like dozens of billions of dollar acquisition shit that's going on around them. And they're like quietly very financially successful. But that doesn't matter anymore. And that is very depressing.
Yeah, I if I were working at NetherRealm or any WB game studio, I would be polishing my resume at the moment. I would be getting ready. Yeah. And I hate to, not because you did anything wrong. You did everything right, and you're getting fucked anyway. That's modern capitalism. Okay, Sean, I'm trying to organize this in a way where we go from sad news to like happy or at least interesting news, kind of, So here's what we're gonna do. Here's a better movie story. This week we also had Disney and Lucasfilm confirm reports that they are in fact working on a full restoration of the original theatrical cut of Star Wars. And it will be getting a full theatrical re-release in February 2027 for the film's 50th anniversary. This has been reported for a while on background as part of Disney's broader efforts to do more proper restorations of catalog material. This is actually an interesting trend that's been happening in recent years. Disney had been pretty bad about releasing any catalog stuff. Their restorations of their animated catalog in the Blu-ray era had been awful. Like if you look at the Blu-ray masters of any of their classic movies, they just look terrible. They're like real hatchet jobs to those films. But in recent years, they've done more like proper investment in home video and in 4K restorations. So like we've seen 4K versions of Cinderella and Snow White that are the first proper restorations those movies have gotten probably since VHS and Laserdisc. Or this year we've gotten like Fox catalog titles like Kingdom of Heaven and Master and Commander in really impressive releases. They did Tron this year that had a really impressive 4K disc that is like impossible to get because it sold out so fast. So this is something they've been doing, and they have like proper good people working on these too, in impressive ways. To recap this for everybody, the last real release of the theatrical cuts of Star Wars, it was like a new, like making new masters, doing a new release, was the 1993 Laserdiscs, because the 2006 DVDs that also put out the theatrical cuts of Star Wars, those were just the Laserdisc transfers put on DVD. No work was done to them. So we've had to rely on fan restorations of these films for over 30 years, our entire lifetimes. You and I were born in 1992, so only one release of these in our lifetimes. And while some of those fan preservations are truly excellent, they have to rely on things like show prints, like 35mm prints, that's what 4K 77 is, or the existing HD versions, like the despecialized editions, and those existing HD versions are pretty bad. So all of those come with imperfections. Like a print can be fun to watch, but it's not what you would actually want to make a proper from-the-ground-up restoration of. You want to go to the negative, or as close to the negative as you can get. The reports have been that Disney is going back to the negatives, and probably doing significant reconstruction efforts to put everything back together, since those negatives, to the best of our knowledge, were somewhat mangled under Lucas and the special editions. So getting these would be a real game changer. And while Disney has only confirmed the original New Hope Star Wars so far, we know they're also working on Empire and Return of the Jedi, because why would you do one and not all three? Yeah. And presumably in 2027 we'll get physical media of these. And man, what a long time coming, Sean. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I mean, I remember that this was of like when there were like Star Wars fans that were positive about the whole notion of Disney buying Star Wars. This was like the thing that like a bunch of people said, it's
Yeah.
like, well, of course they'll release the original theatrical versions as soon as it's out of George Lucas's hands. And I was like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like Disney does that shit. And you know, hey, like it took a very long time and kind of like a whole attitude shift within the company. But yeah, I mean, I would be thrilled to have a really good home video release of those movies. And it does feel like, you know, we are in a like a better spot right now for home video stuff than we have been in for a while, where it feels like there's like more companies are seeing that there is a good boutique market for these things, right? That it's not the same kind of like giant mass market thing you had with like VHS and DVDs, but you have people who are collectors and are like, you know, high level enthusiasts that are willing to pay good money for nice versions of these movies. And you have lots of like really good boutique labels that are doing this stuff. And it's cool to see that it feels like that has persuaded Disney at some point to say like, I mean, we have all this shit. I'm sure it is, you know, for the scale of the kind of money that Disney is constantly dealing with, it's like chump change. It's fucking nothing to hire the people that do this restoration efforts and put these products out. And so it's really nice to see that it seems to be really happening.
It's chump change and it's guaranteed income. Like you
Yes.
just know that if you do any of the movies they're doing, you will sell out a print run and you will make money. It's like a very meat and potatoes, you know, piece of capitalism, and it works, and it's a good business. And actually, this is another thing that's kind of scary about the Warner Brothers deal, is that Warner has been the best at this of the studios in recent years. They do so much good catalog work. The Warner Archive is a fucking heroic division of people who do just amazing work month in and month out, getting stuff out on Blu-ray and 4K. And I hope Netflix, if they buy it, keeps that around. I think it's possible Netflix would. Paramount would not. We know Paramount under the Ellisons has completely gutted its physical media division, and Paramount does not make new catalog titles. They will sometimes repackage existing ones, but they do not do any new restorations. Warner Brothers has been doing that. Disney, and with their Fox catalog, has been doing it, and I hope we get more and more of it. And this is cool. And yeah, my guess is that within Lucasfilm, everyone has probably wanted to do this since the merger went through in 2015, and I think it just took until Disney was willing to like give, because like we say chump change, but this is still a significant, like this is still an amount that like you would need to go high up in the company to get like an approval for this. This is an expensive process, and I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad like the shadow of George Lucas in this specific domain is far enough gone that they feel okay doing it, because you know, there are multiple generations of fans who have probably never seen these, and that's too bad, because the versions that are out there, like on Disney Plus now, are so bad. They're so mangled. The restorations are so poor. They fuck with the color and the grain and all these things. You have all the dumb special edition changes. You have Darth Vader shouting no. They're just bad versions of the movies. And you know, I'm showing Star Wars in one of my classes next year, the original Star Wars, and I'm using the 4K 77 version, and I look forward to a year from now, I'll be able to use an actual fucking Blu-ray, and that'll be cool. That'll be really cool.
Yeah. Although what I do hope that they do, though, is that they should just put all the other versions on it as well. Like, I want one set that has all of them. Like, give me like, and like, you know, not just it's the original version and then the most recent special edition, because there's just like so many different times that they went back and like touched it up and tweaked it and added in a new thing, like the no at the end of Return of the Jedi. That's like, I want that, like, you know, buying a fucking Lupin the Third movie from Discotheque and you have 8 different English dubs that they've compiled from some like weird sources. Like, I want that shit. That's my favorite thing about buying physical media, is I want everything you could possibly have and just shove it on this fucking disc, please. And thank you.
It would be interesting. I think it would be hard, because if they're building this from the original camera negative, any of the changes, like, they're effectively changes to the whole movie. It's color grade, it's structure, everything. But it would be interesting. Like, I would like a set that has a proper, like, number one focus, the original version. Yes, but then, like, there's the 97 special editions, there's the 2004 DVDs that revised it further, there's the 2011 Blu-rays that added the no and all that other bullshit, and like every one of those added more, and it would be interesting to have a catalog of all of those, which the fans have been keeping around. You can go find that everywhere. The other thing I hope they do at some point, if anyone from Disney is listening, please also do this for The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Quietly, no one cares because a lot of people don't like The Phantom Menace, but the most mangled Star Wars movie is The Phantom Menace. The version that is on Blu-ray and streaming now looks awful. It is the most DNR'd into the sun film you will ever watch, where everything has been turned into wax, because that was a film shot on celluloid. But because the other prequels were shot on digital, later versions of Phantom Menace, Lucas did all this tweaking to try to make it look digital, and it makes for one of the worst looking films you will ever watch. And then it also adds things like bad CGI Yoda, and it has the extended pod race sequence, which is interminable, and all this other stuff. And the original theatrical cut of Phantom Menace, which the only way you can find that in good quality is a rip of the Japanese Laserdisc. I have that. It's the best quality version of Phantom Menace you can find. I would like a newer version than Japanese Laserdisc from 1999, please. So that would be nice too. That movie also has a camera negative. You can just scan it and be done. It's great. Please do it.
Yes, I very much agree.
Yeah. All right. Here's a really interesting piece of news. This is a couple weeks old, and actually this came out shortly after our last podcast, Sean, and I was kind of kicking ourselves that we didn't get to talk about it yet. But this is huge news, and I feel like if there were less other shit going on in the news, we could devote an entire episode to this. But this is Steam news. Valve has announced their new hardware initiative, the Steam Machine. The real Steam Machine this time. The Steam Machine was the friends we made along the way. Until now, we finally got it. This is a PC in a small form factor, maybe 2/3 the size of like an Xbox Series X, that kind of like shape, although more of a cube. It uses Steam OS, and it's around the PS5 in terms of performance level. They also announced a new Steam VR headset called the Steam Frame. But the basic pitch of this is take everything they did on the Steam Deck, which is their sort of Nintendo Switch style handheld, and now put it in a proper like console package that you could put with a monitor or under your TV. Use Steam OS, which at this point is a very mature platform for all of this. There's been a lot of discussion about the potential price of the hardware. It has not been officially revealed, although Valve has suggested it would cost about what an equivalent PC would cost. And if you add up the components, that's probably somewhere in the $700 to $800 price range. And I'll say even there, comparing that to like pre-builts and stuff, that would be an interesting deal. This is something I'm pretty excited for, Sean. This is a kind of thing I've always wanted. It's always frustrated me this has never existed in the PC space, because I prefer to do a lot of like, particularly with like first-person shooters and stuff, I would love to be able to more easily play with mouse and keyboard and do other stuff that like consoles don't allow you to do. But I also don't want to build a PC. I don't want to pay thousands of dollars. I don't want to maintain it and all that stuff. This is something I've wanted since the original round of Steam machines in like 2010. And I think it's cool that Valve is doing this. I think it's great that they're doing this.
Yeah, it's really fascinating in a whole bunch of ways because, yes, for people who don't remember, there was a first round of Valve attempting this 10 years ago with a Steam Machine initiative that was Linux-based, just like SteamOS, but it was not yet. SteamOS was not a thing. It was just like Steam Big Picture Mode, I think, back then. You also had the original version of the Steam controller, because there is a new Steam controller that they're making for this that is a more normal kind of controller that has some of the features of the Steam Deck, so you can do, I think it's got like touchpads on it, so you can do mouse things. But the original Steam controller had like gyro fucking like trackpads, basically. It was some weird funky shit. I know that there's some people who swear by those controllers, but I remember it being very off-putting for most people I heard about them. But yeah, this is obviously like off the back of the Steam Deck that's a few years old now and has been a very successful initiative for them, right? Within a niche market, right? Like if you're comparing it to something like a Switch or like, a PlayStation or even Xbox, it's not selling that number of units, but it's not trying to sell that number of units, and so it is really fascinating to see Valve transitioning out of just doing Steam Deck into this like original idea they had for the Steam Machine, this thing that, as you say, Jonathan, feels like something that is such a long time coming, that's always felt kind of bizarre that it's never happened. But I think the clear reason why it's never happened is because Windows is a piece of shit operating system, especially for something like this.
Yes.
And this is the thing that's kind of fascinating about it happening right now, is that this is clearly the thing that Microsoft/Xbox is trying to do for whatever their next Xbox is, and they've got their thing they did with Asus and their like Xbox ROG Ally Xbox XX Xbox, whatever the fuck that title is of that device. where they've sort of like are trying out this sort of lean version of Windows 11 for video gaming and all this kind of stuff. And it's just so clear that Valve and SteamOS is just miles and miles and miles beyond where Microsoft is currently at in trying to make an OS that is designed for this, because it's like the small form factor PC that is designed to run on a TV like a console seems like it's such an obvious idea, but if you have to deal with like a bunch of Windows pop-ups and having to put in your password everywhere, and like you're constantly being like, oh shit, my controller can't work on this menu interface, so I have to have a mouse over here and a keyboard over here, all that kind of stuff just seems like it would be a fucking nightmare. And clearly Valve has gotten their shit in an order that they're past all of those things. Now, I know that
we also know there's been like Digital Foundry has done, and other places have done really good analysis of just how much the performance premium is now on SteamOS versus Windows. Like Windows takes a really big chunk out of your performance at this point, and SteamOS is a lean operating system that does not harm the performance of video games.
Yeah, it improves it over how the equivalent game running on Windows. Yeah, absolutely. Now, we do know that there are some drawbacks, notably like most high-profile multiplayer games are not going to run currently on SteamOS, just like they don't on Steam Deck, because there's kernel-level anti-cheat software that exists that those kinds of games use. And so games like, I believe Fortnite uses it, so stuff like Fortnite, Battlefield, you'd not be able to run on this device, like Destiny, stuff like that, because their anti-cheat software basically blocks it from running on this. It will be an AMD hardware, not NVIDIA, so it's not going to have like the latest and greatest in terms of whatever DLSS, ray reconstruction, all that kind of stuff. Though from what I understand, AMD is starting to catch up to those technologies. It's not there. So, there are obviously like certain drawbacks to going to the SteamOS and what Valve can realistically do here. But it just feels like if you're someone who has like a decent Steam library, or someone who's interested in getting into the Steam ecosystem, but like you said, Jonathan, is not interested in upkeeping a whole PC, also is particularly interested in being able to play these games on a TV. That's like the biggest thing for me, is I don't want to fucking plug a PC into a television, because to me a PC is such a multi-purpose device, and there are lots of games that I like to play on PC that are just PC-focused games that I'm fine at sitting at a desk for, but, I would never play like Assassin's Creed Shadows sitting at my desk with a mouse and keyboard. Like, that's just is not how I like it would feel comfortable playing those games. Like that kind of like third person open world action game, I want to like lie down on my couch and have my nice big TV and play it with a controller. And you have to have like a very particular setup to try to do that with a regular PC. And that to me is the huge advantage of the Steam machine, is you just be able to plug it in. All of your Steam cloud saves and all that stuff would just come over. All of your Steam games, or the majority of your Steam games, would be able to play again. Anything with like the anti-cheat stuff that blocks it on SteamOS, you wouldn't be able to do. Like that's a really appealing pitch for a device. And I do think it is hilarious that it just feels like Valve is so aggressively eating Microsoft's entire lunch with like them trying to do the same initiative, but Steam has so much goodwill around they have done a good job on this kind of shit for so long at this point, and Microsoft and Xbox have very definitively not, and have like stumbled over and over and over again. Like it just doesn't feel like we are that far beyond the Windows for Gaming Live in like Halo 2 for Windows Vista and like that whole stuff. Like it feels like Microsoft is somehow still in that world, and they've never been able to escape their past multiple rounds of trying to do their like 4 games on PCs initiatives. They've never really kind of gotten that shit together. And Steam is like the most efficient platform for video games in the world, and having a thing that you can plug into your TV seems pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, plug into your TV, or like, again, for my usage, I would just love this. I have a nice like monitor that's good for gaming. I have a mouse and keyboard set up. I would love to be able to just plop this right here on my desk and be able to play first-person shooters that way. And then if I wanted to put it under my TV, it's a console-style thing, so you could just pick it up and move it, right? Like, that versatility would be great, because, like, even if the PS5 had really good mouse and keyboard support, I'm sorry, buddy, that thing is too big and bulky to move. I had to tell my students in my video game class that several times this year, where they're like, I'm like, we could also be looking at, this game, but I only have that on PS5 and I'm not bringing that to school, guys. It doesn't fit in my backpack. I'd have to have a big ass box because that thing is a behemoth. And this is like a nice little sort of cube form factor, which is good too. And like, we know the performance based on the specs is going to be like modest, but in a good way. Like the way games scale today, I think it's like, it sounds perfectly acceptable to me. And the fact that the entire, related to our next news item, the entire video game market is going to be in a state of stagnation for quite a while based on what is going to be available to consumers. I think this will be a good buy. I'm excited for this, and I'm also excited that Valve is creating this product category so that more people will do stuff like this. Yes. Because we also know they're probably fine, like, their goal here is to get people using Steam, not necessarily their hardware. So I think we'll see SteamOS in more places, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not expecting these things to sell more than like 10-something million copies. I mean, there's a chance. I mean, right. At first they're not going to manufacture anything near the level of like, if there is an insane demand and this is going to be 100 million selling device, like that would have to be a long thing, because we know they're not, like, you're not going to go to a Best Buy and buy this thing. You're going to buy it directly from Valve. But there's a chance that it catches on and catches fire and it just becomes a huge thing. But I think even if it just sells a few million copies or a few million devices, I think Valve would be perfectly happy with that. In the same way they are with the Steam Deck. Like, it is not, their business is not selling hardware. Their business is managing the Steam storefront. And this is just another means of accessing it, just like the Steam Deck was. And so it doesn't feel like there's not a huge pressure on this device the way that whatever the next, Xbox is going to have a huge amount of pressure from Microsoft to perform at a certain level. And that's just not a thing that Valve has to worry about, because Steam is already the most successful video game platform in the world in terms of the largest number of users by a metric shit ton are on Steam. Now, obviously, the nature of Steam is hugely different, and like there's basically functionally infinite number of devices that could theoretically run Steam. So it doesn't make sense to really compare it to a Switch or the Nintendo DS or whatever, other best-selling video game consoles, the PS2. But if you're just going by raw numbers, Steam is the biggest player in the video game business. And so they can have, here's like, nice extra devices that kind of supplement things without having to be the thing that buoys up their entire business, because they don't need help doing that.
I mean, the thing that they're doing is they're setting new standards for the market that push people towards Steam because they have done a better job with their platform. Like, hey, you and I have been doing this long enough, Sean, that we've covered periods where Steam was under the gun, where people were like very mad at what they were doing with their platform. And they've come a long way, mainly by doing what people like, things that are like very clearly beneficial to the end user in these ways, and have created these new product categories. And that means that like Microsoft, even if they get their shit together and manage to do a good version of this in the future, what they'll be doing is a good version of the game that Valve has put forward for them to play. Like, that's their goal here, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it just feels like there's really no world in which Microsoft is not lagging behind what Valve is doing. I mean, like, I can say that when I got my PC, like a year or so ago, a little bit over a year ago, like, I did download the Windows Xbox Game Store because it came with a free thing for a month of Xbox PC Game Pass. And I messed around with it. It's like, it was just a fucking nightmare. And it's like, if you're someone who knows and likes to use PCs, it's that sort of thing that is just like the absolute wrong choice, which is to take away the freedom of what you want to use with the device for. And it's like trying to just like pick, well, I want this game to download onto I don't want it on my fucking C drive, guys. Like, I want to download it on this like other SSD that I installed in my computer. And it's like that kind of like the level of managing that shit was just nightmarish. And it just was a fucking terrible like whole store interface and experience I had, to the point where it's like, even though I had a couple of games that I could have played for free for a little bit, I just kind of gave up on it very quickly, and then downloaded Steam and then was playing a couple of games and like replaying Half-Life 2 and stuff like on that, rather than playing some new games that I had for free on Game Pass. It's just Windows is so bad at that kind of thing. They have always been so bad at it. It's just baffled me. My entire lifetime has been spent watching them constantly trotting out new, this time for real. We're doing the game shit for realsies on PC, and every time they fucking suck at it, and you just can't fathom how have they never gotten it right. They've been trying to do it for like 20 years at this point.
And this is why I just don't believe they're going to. Like, I don't believe they're going to be able to do this pivot with Xbox, because, like, here's the difference. If Valve decides that they want to create a Steam OS that is, like, really optimized for games and does all these things that players want, they can put the whole company towards that. And no one at Valve will be disagreeing with that as a goal. There's nothing else Valve does that causes them not to be able to do that, right? But Windows, even if every person in the Xbox division were to pour their heart and soul into creating a version of Windows that works well for this kind of device, well, they don't get to decide that. Windows is this giant behemoth of which Xbox is kind of a tiny thing off in the corner for the people in the Windows, like in the Microsoft C-suite, right? And so they're having to fight against much larger trends in the platform, all of which are getting inexorably worse right now. So, like, that's the challenge that the Xbox team is facing that Valve does not have in front of them.
Yeah, you're right. Like, Valve doesn't have a guy in the corner who's just constantly piping up and be like, but how does Copilot interface with this feature, you know?
Yes.
And then there's some, like, even more obscure asshole in a deeper corner who's just like, but what if you want to use Microsoft Teams on it? What if you've got a calendar meeting on Microsoft Teams? How does that work while you're playing Call of Duty? You know, it's like you don't have that shit going on of like the 70 different products that Microsoft is also trying to jam into whatever this fucking thing is. And then especially the AI stuff. It's like Valve as a privately owned company, they can just decide, there's a privately owned company that is focused on one very specific thing. They can make a very narrowly targeted platform and not have to worry about the asshole constantly chiming in over their shoulder.
Speaking of assholes constantly chiming in over our shoulders, AI. Yep. It's destroying the world. Sean, you want to talk about the corner it is currently destroying? This is a news item you put on here, and I want to hear you go off on it.
Yeah, so I just labeled this as RAM madness is what I put this onto the timeline. I could have gone like really deep down a rabbit hole and pulled a bunch of numbers, but I don't think we need to go to like every like here's how all these things increased in price. So I tried to get just the big picture on it.
RAM Madness does sound like it would be the best puzzle game on the Sega CD in 1995, I gotta say.
It does. Yes, that has, there's some really good FMV that comes in between your little missions for RAM Madness, yes.
It would have a killer soundtrack.
Absolutely. So for here, this is why I put it in the notes. Due to the ongoing industrial bullshit of AI, consumer RAM prices have dramatically skyrocketed, with reports of RAM increasing in price by, in some places, currently 3 to 4-fold was the biggest I had seen. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is just getting worse as we're talking about it, and it has been for the past several weeks. It's just like been getting dramatically worse and worse. But like if you were going to buy a thing of RAM that was, you know, a year ago, $100, it might be $300 to $400 in price right now, or even more. In fact, this is my favorite, just a crazy thing about this is some people sharing pictures at a certain point about this. If you go to some brick and mortar stores, they have begun taking down like specific prices of RAM and basically putting up just like market price signs. Because of how intensely it's fluctuating, you can't price the fucking thing on your shelf, because by the time someone comes into your store, after you put up the prices in the morning, someone comes to the store, grabs the thing, and goes to the counter, it might be $50 more expensive at that point. So the store just put it as market price, and they will have to look up and evaluate the price at the store. You have to haggle, which as soon as I saw that, it reminded me of the Amazing City, the animation bit, where they go into the bread store, and there's the one piece of bread on the fucking counter, and it just has a little thing that says market price, and like, oh my god, how amazing must this bread be? And the guy comes out from behind the back of the store, it's like, yes, so the time has come. And he just has all these like really dramatic lines about how the fucking bread he's trying to sell to them.
Oh my god. And then as you also note here, one of the biggest like existential parts of the story is that one of the biggest RAM manufacturers, Micron, has just completely ceased selling RAM to consumers, which is such a danger sign because they're like one of the major ones that does this. So yeah, if you're trying to build a PC or upgrade a PC or anything like that right now, I mean, and this is also, we're seeing this with NVMEs are heading this way as well, SSDs. Like, if you want to buy an NVMe, probably try to do it before the end of 2025, because 2026, it's probably going to go in this direction like RAM has, and it's terrifying. It's bad. It's like, I saw quite a few, like, independent, like, prognosticators I trust saying, this alone probably puts back the launch of the next console generation by 1 to 2 years, if not more. Like, this is bad.
Yes, no, I mean, this is crazy. It feels so much worse than even the last time we had something like this was around 2019, 2020, when then it was still that was when we were in the cryptocurrency shit. And it's wild to me that wasn't that long ago. Like, in our, I think partially because of the pandemic, it feels like 2020 was 1,000 years ago. But if you're looking at a scale of history, like, the pace at which these, like, sort of tech scam, like, explosions have been happening is just wild, because we went from cryptocurrency shit to the metaverse, and then now to AI in the span of like 7 to 8 years, basically, is like the whole lifetime of all three of those, like, kind of mainstream, the tech press being very enthusiastic. They're like, look at this technology, it's changing the world. And let's hear about these, the fucking Mark Zuckerberg in an hour-long interview about all the things that cryptocurrency is going to do, or that the metaverse is going to do, or that AI is going to do. As soon as we move on to the next one, people forget that the previous one existed, and nobody remembers metaverse anymore, and fucking Meta/Facebook is shutting all that shit down, basically, because it was all just a smokescreen in the first place anyways for the company's reputation. But anyways, like, this, like, shit, the last time we had something like this was in 2019, 2020 with semiconductors. And there it was a combination of both effects on the supply chain of the pandemic, but that was also going to happen anyways because of the way that people were buying up GPUs and stuff for running their Bitcoin farms and all that nonsense. That made GPUs wildly expensive, but it made everything very expensive. It was something that, like, it was a big stress point around the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. One of the main reasons why those consoles were basically impossible to get for like a year. It's why the Xbox Series S did relatively well in its first year on the market and did better than the Series X, is because it could sell way more of them because it had way less shit in it. So you could just make more with less. Right? But this, to me, is clearly dramatically worse than what that was. And the fact that Micron, which is, again, one of the biggest RAM manufacturers, and there aren't that many big companies manufacturing RAM, just fully pulling out of the consumer market, only selling RAM at an industrial level to AI server farms, basically, just feels like it is truly disastrous for especially the PC market, is where this is going to have the biggest hit, where you're just really kind of pricing out probably the majority of people interested in owning and operating their own personal computer. And if you're someone who wants to do that, especially at like an enthusiast level, this is going to fuck you over big time. And whether it's like you're someone who likes to, you run your own YouTube channel and you edit your own videos and all that kind of stuff, like, you better hope that your rig currently is good enough for what you need it for several years, because you're not going to be able to replace or upgrade this kind of stuff for anything that's at even close to approaching some kind of reasonable price point for years. Because there's, we're going to start up new factories, and you'll see news about like, oh, there's new RAM factory opening up somewhere here and all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are going to take years to spin up, years to like actually start getting a product on the supply. And the fucking crazy shit is that by the time, this is my prediction, by the time all of that starts happening, this bubble will have fucking burst, and the AI server farm thing is going to fucking crater. Because it already is just a game of people playing magical fucking numbers with their finances and just passing around money in a way that to make it look like AI is some sort of like huge money maker, when it is like the biggest money sink in the fucking world. And eventually, like, that is the thing that's going to correct this, is that shit is going to tank. All these crazy tech startups that are trying to sell some sort of bullshit AI product are going to tank. And so there will be, in several years from now, I'm sure, a massive flood of like horribly abused GPUs and RAMs from these server farms that never really ended up being anything, flooding the market. And if you want like a GPU that's got fucking 6 months left on its lifespan, because that's the other thing, is those server farms burned this technology out crazy fast. That will be something at some point. I'm sure we'll have a weird fluctuation where RAM is going to be crazy cheap for some 6 months period several years from now when all this shit craters. But it is wild, and it is definitely one of the most concerning things I've seen just in terms of like the market and prices for consumer technology in my lifetime. And it does make you wonder how this affects obviously the personal computing space. It makes you wonder for the Steam machine we just talked about, is 700 to 800 price range. Is that really going to be the reality when that thing comes out early next year? How is this going to affect the price for existing devices like the Nintendo Switch 2, the PS5? Is Xbox going to have to just walk out and just bump the price on the Xbox Series X for like the 5th time again? And then what does this mean for devices looking to get put onto the market in the coming years, like whatever PS6 and Xbox is? How do you deal with this? Would it ever make sense to try to release a product that's going to be $300 to $400 more expensive purely on the price of the memory? And I would guess that probably most of the companies would say no, it doesn't. So it's going to be a really wild couple of years to see what the tech industry does in response to these prices, because it's not something you can just laugh and shrug off.
That was a great explanation, Sean, and you hit like every part of it. One thing I would say to other, gamers out there is make sure you're happy with whatever you have right now, because it's what you're going to have for a while.
Yes,
like we're not changing. I don't think there's going to be a new generation anytime soon, and I think a lot of developers are going to be well aware that you're not going to be targeting major like forward innovations in the near future. You're going to be targeting scalability, which we've already been moving in that direction for a while, but like I think that's going to be the name of the game for a good time to come. And really, like, Sean, you were talking about putting this in the context of all the other bubbles that have come and gone. And I really think this is obviously one small corner of it, but this is a symptom of what I think is probably the biggest story in like global politics at the moment that is not being told, which is that, especially because all corporate media is so all in on the AI bullshit, they're not telling you the truth, which is what a bubble this is, how disastrous the bursting is going to be when it happens, because it's so tied in to so many parts of our economy. And like, I think Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman and all the billionaires doing this they're gonna need to be building some fucking bunkers come a few years from now when we get a 2008 style collapse from this, because I think we're gonna see a turn against big tech over the next decade that is going to be a real shift in like the politics of the day, and I think it's going to be a necessary one. And obviously you and I are big AI skeptics, to put it mildly, yes. But like even out in the real world, I've been hearing more of this. Like, Sean, the happiest thing that happened to me this semester is one day I walked into one of my classrooms. Now, this is one of my upper level classes. There were two seniors, college seniors talking, so like 22-year-olds probably. And I overheard their conversation, and they were just talking about how much ChatGPT sucks and how bad AI is and how they hate using it. And I was like, I wanted to turn to them and go, you are my favorite students. You both get A's. You don't have to come to class anymore. You did it. It's like you won, Charlie. You won. You learned the lesson. It's the end of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I was so proud. And like the rest of the class started talking about it. It's like, yeah, you do have some students using this shit to cheat, but those are the students who don't care about their education, right? Like who don't really value it in any intrinsic way. And I've just seen this more and more. Like, there's even charts showing this that I've seen where like the biggest use case for ChatGPT by far is people just using it to cheat at school. And so over the summer months, usage just craters because people, like, there's been so many news stories recently of like executives use AI, but no employees do and stuff like that, because people with real jobs don't do this because there is no productivity gain. People with fake jobs, whose job is to just sell shit to other people, sell smoke and mirrors, your snake oil salesman, they love it because it's a really cool snake oil. But like, that's all it is. And I do just think like this is this is an incoming nuclear bomb for the global economy that people are going to need to be guarding against.
Yeah, no, and I definitely am seeing a similar thing. I think just anecdotally, I think the like young people, and I think generally everyone is, but I also think like young people are see AI as kind of like it's lame, like it because it sucks,
Yeah.
and they make fun of it, and you know, and that is not going to stop some of them from cheating with ChatGPT. Although honestly, I have had way fewer students try to do that this year than I did last year. There was a lot more last year that we had to really have that talk. I've had a couple this year, but also those kids like understood that like how fucking terrible it was, right? Like they like in terms of like not just terrible as like an ethical thing, but terrible in terms of the thing that they produced as a result of it was shit. And didn't make sense. It didn't apply to the prompt in any really meaningful way because it never does. It's like the cheating with AI. I think that's maybe part of where it's starting to turn is also that it's just like it's so clear that cheating with AI is a bad way to cheat. Like you'd be way better off if it was like a class where we're doing a novel or like when we're going to hit Romeo and Juliet in the spring. You'd be so much better off getting fucking Spark Notes and using that because that's not even like full on cheating. That's like you're trying to take lots of shortcuts. But that's
that's just being lazy. That's good old fashioned, American laziness. Pull yourself up mildly by your bootstraps, right?
It's like, it's just, if you want to do the bare minimum of work, and have something else do a shit ton of the work for you, but still have something you can pass off at the end to try to get a grade, it's like, it turns out like the old methods were just way better. Like AI's bad at even that because it's so hilariously obvious. It's maybe a little bit more camouflaged when you're at the college level because you're getting some students that aren't like misspelling every third word because they're not 14 years old. But particularly when they're teaching freshmen in English, I will tell you with a lot of confidence, there's no freshman in English who is ever going to use a fucking M dash in their writing. It's just never going to happen. And it's just like hilarious that they try to pass it off as their own writing. Like, my man, dude, you don't even remember to put apostrophes and contractions. Like, it's like we're not even close. Like, regardless of the fact that this would get a 0 anyways because it didn't even answer the question, it's so obviously not your work. So yeah, like I do think that the public sentiment around AI has only soured even more, and it is just such a it's this sort of self-fulfilling promise amongst the executives of these companies that are desperate for, as they have been like since the iPhone, basically, of like everyone's desperate for we need to build the new thing that is the new thing in tech, that is the thing that we can dominate the entire industry with whatever this product is. And that product simply has not come about because I don't think there's really a use case that they've ever found for it. And cryptocurrency was bullshit. It was kind of a thing. And AI is bullshit in terms of how they're using it. But one of the most tragic things to me is that like there's lots of really cool machine learning technologies that do exist, that have existed forever, and they're all getting caught up in this like whole bullshit with these weird general use products like ChatGPT that are terrible because there's no use case for them. I don't even know what they think the use case for them is. I don't know what you're supposed to use it for when you sit down to try to use it, other than to cheat at school. Like there's just no clear call for it, but there's lots of cool machine learning technologies that have existed that should continue to exist, that it just is like frustrating that legitimate cool innovations in certain tech sectors get sunk by this terrible AI bullshit that the whole industry is caught up in. But I will say the one that is funniest to me is the metaverse, and looking back on that, because that wasn't even a thing. That wasn't even a technology. And that's where I think, like, I'm curious where we're going to go next, is I don't think there is another, and maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think there's another scam technology sitting on the horizon for them to leap onto next time. Because there barely was last time. Because it was all the cryptocurrency shit, which kind of morphed into NFTs, and then that very quickly jumped into the metaverse, and there was, like, kind of this transition of, like, this kind of connection between the NFTs and this kind of digital permanence and digital scarcity of goods that then exists in this digital world of the metaverse. And just ignore the fact that Second Life was a giant social phenomenon in the early 2000s that was exactly everything that we're saying. And let's just pretend that never happened and you never saw like the random episode of every cop show from the year 1999 to 2005 that had their what if someone was murdered in Second Life and then they were killed in real life episode that all those shows had. Let's ignore that whole thing happened. Let's pretend it's all new. And then they could very easily and conveniently jump onto the AI thing as that came around, because again, there are legitimate cool innovations and legitimate use cases for the fundamental technology that powers this stuff. It's just the thing that they're trying to sell to the world is not that, because it isn't a panacea. It is not the ultimate technology. It's not going to be a thing that replaces every, productivity tool on the planet, because it's bad at all of those things. It's good at a set of narrow elements. But I just have no idea and don't think that there's something for them to jump onto next time. I don't know where they try to go from here. When the AI bubble bursts, what new narrative could they possibly spin up? And that's where I'm kind of seeing the scenario you said earlier, Jonathan, of like they have to get bunkers. Is I do wonder if they are truly going to be fucked this time once the shit turns on this, because they just don't have another like ninja smoke bomb to throw into the ground to hide behind like they did with AI.
And that's my point, is that this is going to become part of politics in a way some of those other things have not been. Like, I think it is very possible that, so in the US, we have our midterm elections coming up a year from now, in fall 2026, so November 2026. And I think it is entirely possible you will have people running for like governor, or just at the local level, city council, whatever, mayor, in places where electrical bills are going up massively because of AI data centers, who run on the single issue of, I'm going to tear down that fucking plant. I'm going to go shut down the AI plant, and I'm going to save your electricity bills. Because the number one issue in the 2020s in American politics has been affordability. It ate Joe Biden alive, even though he was trying to work on it, and it's eating Donald Trump alive because he's trying to make it worse, right? And we've seen that. Like honestly, I'm the most like optimistic about politics right now, as I have been at any point in 2025, because we've finally seen the backlash start to Trump's policies, because people are still mad about affordability, and they can recognize who's making it worse. And they're also going to be able to, electricity bills are going so out of control in parts of the country with AI data centers that, like, yeah, if it's within a politician's power to do something about those AI data centers, you bet your ass that's going to become an easy campaign line, because you can draw a one-to-one connection that is true and accurate about, here's a way I could lower your costs. Fuck the AI people. And most voters would be cool with that, because they're not bought into the narrative. They're just people, right?
Yeah. And this RAM thing, we were talking about in the context of like consumer technology, because that's obviously part of the focus with our podcast and our hobbies. But like, it's like, this is going to affect everything, because everything needs RAM. That, I mean,
right.
I was going to say like every piece of technology, but that's everything. Like, if you're going to go buy a new refrigerator, it's got fucking RAM in it. You're going to go buy a new car, it's got RAM in it. You want to get a new thermostat? Guess what? It's going to have fucking RAM in it, because everything has memory. Everything's like hooking up to Wi-Fi, all that kind of shit. Like, I'm desperately trying to find shit that doesn't do that, because I hate most modern appliance technologies, because it's fucking terrible. I want the old shit, please. Please give me a car that just doesn't have any of that shit in it. That's the world I want to live in.
But like, if you are fighting for an affordability agenda, an easy way you could do this in certain parts of the country, and maybe even at the national level, would be like an anti-tech package of like doing things to bring all these tech prices down, because you could actually affect that. There's some affordability things that are much harder for a politician to affect, like inflation, frankly. Like, that's a tough thing for like someone running for office to be able to affect. Housing prices are difficult to be able to affect. The price of RAM, the use of electricity and AI data centers, you can make promises that you can fulfill on that.
Exactly. So I do think that there is a silver lining for some of this, of that backlash is starting to become a much bigger thing. Whereas like a year ago, it just felt like everybody I ran into had the wool pulled over their eyes by this AI shit. Like, when I'm thinking about like the people at work and stuff like that are, I'm like, legitimately, the majority of the people I work with at my school like are the age of my mother. Like they are, like, I'm working with lots of people that are in their 50s and 60s. And so it's like, and a lot of them had their, really kind of bought into the whole AI thing, because there's a big initiative to try to get it into education and all this stuff by these companies. I mean, they're trying to get into everything. Education is just one of those things. From the teacher perspective, not the student perspective, specifically is what I'm talking about here. And now there's way more skepticism over it, because there's been shit like certain standardized tests using AI to grade certain percentages of essays that have been submitted for that test. And so they're instead because they can't afford to pay a couple more retired teachers to go grade some standardized test essays. Like, I don't know where the cost saving is.
Yeah, it's not like they were spending a lot of money on it in the first place. I can fucking tell you that.
And they're like throwing that over to AI, and you see some of the scores for those essays. You're like, how has this student been given a 0? I mean, it's not like it's the best essay I've ever read in my life, but it's not a 0 out of 10 like that. There's some and so there's a lot of backlash there. Like, it's just, I feel like the mood has shifted on it a lot, which is encouraging for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Here, this one's just fun, Sean. This one's just a fun, silly news item, because every indication is that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 has performed terribly this year, as each subsequent data point that becomes available indicates it has dramatically struggled. For example, it sold 63% less than Battlefield 6 in Europe, and 60% less than Black Ops 6 did. And recall that Black Ops 6 also struggled relative to Modern Warfare 3, particularly because of the Game Pass of it all. And this led to the point where Treyarch even released an official statement on their website, where, among other things, they promise they will never do back-to-back releases of Modern Warfare or Black Ops games. That'll fix it, buddies. You go, girls. This is great.
Yeah, I do want to read off the, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I want to get some of the beginning and then the last bullet point. Because this is just like, it's pretty wild. Like, like, Call of Duty has had periods where it struggled more than others. Like, there was that period, like, pre-Modern Warfare reboot, where you had a string of games that were not doing great by Call of Duty standards, but were still the best-selling game of that year. I am almost 100% certain that Black Ops 7 is not going to be the best-selling game of this year. And it'll be fascinating to see that. It will be the first time that has happened in a year that a Rockstar game has not released since like 2008 or 9 or something. Like, it's either Call of Duty is the best-selling game, or it's Red Dead Redemption 2, or...
What about the Hogwarts Legacy year? Was that the highest-selling game its year?
Hogwarts Legacy might be the one that beat out the equivalent Call of Duty.
I will look that up while you read this, and we'll see.
But yeah, so I'm going to read the beginning part of this statement and then the last part. So it starts, a message from the Call of Duty team. First off, thank you for all for the feedback we have received over the last few months. I want to point out that grammar mistake is theirs, not mine. Call of Duty has enjoyed long-standing success because of all of you, a passionate community that demands excellence and deserves nothing less. We also know that for some of you, the franchise, capital F, by the way, on the word franchise there, the franchise has not met your expectations fully. To be very clear, we know what you expect, and rest assured, we will deliver and over-deliver on those expectations as we move forward. With respect to Black Ops 7, we set our sights to deliver a spiritual successor to Black Ops 2, and the studios have poured their passion into making a great game for all of us that all of us are very proud of. But it's one thing for us to say it. More importantly, it's up to you to try it and judge for yourselves. So as it relates to Black Ops 7 and the future of Call of Duty, here are a few important notes. And so I'm going to skip over some of these. So the first note is you'll have the opportunity to play Black Ops 7 for free. There's going to be a free demo or whatever, like a weekend demo. 2, we are committed to unprecedented seasonal support, so they're going to continue to support the game. But then I want to talk about this last one. 3, our strategy going forward is changing. We will no longer do back-to-back releases of Modern Warfare or Black Ops games. The reasons are many, but the main one is to ensure we provide an absolutely unique experience each and every year. We will drive innovation that is meaningful, not incremental. While we aren't sharing those plans today, we look forward to doing so when the time is right. To be clear, the future of Call of Duty is very strong, and we believe our best days are ahead of us given the depth and talent of our development teams. We have been building the next era of Call of Duty, and it will deliver precisely on what you want, along with some surprises that push the franchise and the genre forward. We look forward to welcoming you in, listening to you, and moving forward together.
Fucking... oh my god.
It's just the most PR. It's like, I felt like I was transported back in time to like 2014, 2015, where if you remember, there was just this like stretch of games in the early PS4, Xbox One era where there were all these like public apologies for like Assassin's Creed Unity, the fucking sports games at that generation shift, the Halo the Master Chief Collection, of all these like games that had like horribly broken features and like just game breaking bugs and shit. And it was just this period where every game felt like it came out broken, and every studio released these kinds of big wordy PR apologies of like, we're listening to you and we agree that we can do better, and our best days are ahead of us as long as you come with us, and we're listening to you, the fans, as we're trying to build up the capital F franchise. And it's just wild to see that kind of statement coming from fucking Call of Duty. Like, I was very interested as I saw the data slowly rolling in and being like, oh shit, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is not doing good, in a way that's like way more than when Call of Duties have had rough years in the past. And then it felt like very much confirmed that this game is in trouble relative to Call of Duty's. Obviously, it will still have sold way more than the majority of the games that came out this year. But at the scale of a Call of Duty, you gotta basically be number one or you're fucked. And if they put out this statement, like they seem like they're kind of fucked.
Okay, so I'm looking at the historical data here, Sean, and this is specifically U.S. sales numbers, but this is the kind of charts you're looking at.
Yeah.
The first year where a Call of Duty was number one was 2009 with Modern Warfare 2. This is unrelated, but I think it's funny. 2008, what a time. The top four games were all Nintendo. It was Wii Play, Mario Kart Wii, Wii Fit, and Smash Bros. Brawl, then GTA 4, then Call of Duty World at War. But then with Modern Warfare 2, they took the top spot, and they had it in 09, 10, 11, 12, 13 was GTA 5 with Call of Duty Ghosts. Even though Ghosts is like the most reviled Call of Duty, was still number 2 that year. Then they had it in 14, 15, 16, 17. 18 was Red Dead Redemption 2, so another Rockstar. Then they came back for 19, 20, 21, 22. And then 2023 is the year where that broke, and it was Hogwarts Legacy in 2023, which was the first game since 2008 that was not Activision or Rockstar at number 1. And this year it probably, and then 2024 was Black Ops 6, and then 2025 at the moment it's Battlefield 6. But obviously that is data from October. We won't know until next year what the final numbers are. Did you know last year Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was number 4 in the US? It's fucking wild.
I remember seeing that. That game did crazy numbers. Yeah.
Unrelated, but yeah. So Call of Duty has had a long period of dominance that is going to very decisively end this year. Because the Hogwarts Legacy year, that wasn't even that the Call of Duty game that year sold poorly necessarily. Hogwarts Legacy was just fucking huge.
Yes, yeah. No, that game sold an insane number of copies. And so it does just feel like this is like a big crack forming. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, I think one is legitimately like Call of Duty has just not had any meaningful competition in its sector since like Halo stopped becoming a big deal, basically.
Yeah.
And so, Battlefield as a franchise has just floundered for years and years and years. And that last release several years ago, 2042, people fucking hated that game. They hated that game. That was a game that got one of these fucking apology statements from the development studio over. But the people love Battlefield 6 this year. It's selling really well, but the sentiment around it is incredibly positive. And then you have that other game, Arc Raiders, which is mostly a PC shooter, and it's one of those extraction shooter style games, like an Escape from Tarkov kind of thing. But that has also been a really big story in the world of shooters this year. So Call of Duty is getting more competition than it normally does, and I think that has hurt them. But it is also this sort of like succession of kind of the thing they've identified in this apology statement, where traditionally Call of Duty was on this cycle where it used to be it was Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and they passed off, and each game came out, Infinity Ward have a game every other year. Then when we entered the PS4 generation, we started with Advanced Warfare was Sledgehammer, and now it was you had Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, so on and so forth. And then that has started to break down. And so you have this really weird thing of where you had Modern Warfare 2 as the new Modern Warfare 2, and then that was followed up with Modern Warfare 3, which a lot of fairly credible insider reporting indicated was originally going to be a DLC expansion for Modern Warfare 2, and they were going to take a year off of box releases and not have a campaign. And then at some point that shifted, and they decided to make it a full-price Call of Duty game, sort of craft together a hastily made campaign that used a bunch of like the multiplayer shit in Warzone and all that to kind of flesh out and make an actual campaign in a very short time frame, and then release that as a full game. Then last year you had Black Ops 6, and then this year they have done the Modern Warfare 3 again, with Black Ops 7, which is another one that I've not played. I don't like the Black Ops games all that much. I prefer the Infinity Ward style Call of Duty games, but all the reviews and all the sentiment I've heard around it is that it's very much like Modern Warfare 3, where if the only thing you're interested in is just grinding out Call of Duty multiplayer, you can have a good time with it. But if you want the bigger package of Call of Duty and like the campaign and all that stuff, and it feel like it's like a big new sequel that's doing new stuff and adjusting the formula, it's not doing that. It's basically like a big DLC expansion for last year's game, but being sold as a $70 boxed product. And I think you can like kind of pull that trick once, and it really hurt their sales in the Modern Warfare 3 year, but you can't do it again. Like, you can't do that twice. Like, I get that these are, Call of Duty people, but they're not idiots. They're not fucking just gonna fucking drink up whatever you dump out for them. If they see you're trying to pull the shit on them again and try to sell them another full price game for what's the equivalent of like a big DLC update, and then they look over there and they see, oh, there's this new Battlefield game that is made in part by ex Call of Duty 4 people from Infinity Ward, and it looks really good, and the reviews are really good, the beta was really good. They're going to jump onto that game and say, fuck off. Like, we're not going to buy that shit from you. And it's very interesting, but I don't know how they solve this problem, because I don't know if the people who are like the accounting people, I have to imagine the idea of not selling a Call of Duty full price game in a year has just got to be terrifying. When you look at the balance sheets and you look at like all of your fiscal years, and you're like, well, in every fiscal year, the best selling product that makes us shit tons of money is the full priced box Call of Duty game that we've been releasing annually for like 20 fucking years at this point. Like, what does your finances look like when you take a year off of that? And it's like, that has got to be like, I'm sympathetic to, that has got to be a terrifying decision to have to be the person that says, no, in order to fix this, we have to change what Call of Duty is, because they have not really changed what Call of Duty is for a very, very long time. Call of Duty has been what Call of Duty has been since Call of Duty 4 in 2007, and they have been trucking with that shit. And obviously, there have been minute changes, but the essence of Call of Duty has been that the entire time. But this feels like this is a moment where it's kind of a do or die moment of you have to figure out, what are you going to do to right this ship? What are you going to do to like get people on board, to win their confidence again? Like, how do you make Call of Duty work in the modern video gaming landscape? And it's just felt like Call of Duty has been immune to so many trends for such a long time. And it feels like this is a moment where maybe we're seeing that finally this franchise is going to crack, that everything ends eventually, that everything, nothing is infinite. And this is maybe the moment where Call of Duty has to figure out what it's going to do.
Honestly, what's ironic is that I think the idea they had for what became Modern Warfare 3 was a good idea. Of like, you have a big game in Modern Warfare 2 that was like pretty well received, sold well, all of that, and then do a like big meaty DLC package. And everything that was going to be in that DLC package is in the game that came out as Modern Warfare 3. And I bought Modern Warfare 3 for my PlayStation a few months later for like $40. So I paid like probably what the DLC would have been priced at, 30 or $40. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed the hell out of it, because I got to just bring over my Modern Warfare 2 progression and stuff. And then the Modern Warfare 3, what the multiplayer was at launch was, it was all the maps from, this is confusing, but original 2009 Xbox 360 Modern Warfare 2, which is a great multiplayer suite. Yeah. And then it had a bunch of like new cool content that was planned for that year for the DLC. And so I had fun with it. I didn't even touch the bad campaign. I just had fun, Call of Duty multiplayer fun. And like, that DLC probably would have sold really well. It would not have created any bad blood in the fan community, because it would have just been, hey, here's a value add for this game you like. Here, it's reasonably priced. Here's some more stuff. You don't want it, you don't have to buy it. And instead, they made it this big boxed release that probably sold more than the DLC would have, but created this bad blood going into this cycle. And so, like, as a long-term play, it was a disastrous idea, but I think the idea of, having one Call of Duty every 2 years with a DLC for that Call of Duty on the off years, I think that's a great idea that could like work really well if you trained the audience into it, but you would have to be willing to like play the long game a little bit, which Microsoft can do. They're fucking fine. So this is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fascinating, that it's just Call of Duty has been such a sort of like watertight ship. It's like this iron wall with no dents in it forever. It's just been this thing you take for granted that, Call of Duty comes out and it does really well. And in the minute, like if you zoom way in, obviously there's like some years that do better than others and some where like, that there's a worse fan reception. But the big picture perspective on it has always been the same. Zoomed out, it just looks like it's one thing. And it just feels like it like this feels like the beginning of an end of an era. Not to say that Call of Duty is going to stop. Obviously, it still sells incredibly well, but I do think it is an identity crisis for the franchise, and the fact that they had to release their like PR'd up weird apology letter thing on their blog is indication of that, if nothing else.
Not great, Bob. Not great. Sean, the Game Awards were the other night. Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, a game neither of us have played, swept the Game Awards. But they did have a bunch of announcements. So, Sean, do you want to hit a couple of these pretty quickly here?
Yeah, first I just want to mention that, it's just tragic to me that nobody else played Super Robot Wars Y and didn't know that there was a better game that came out this year. I say about a game I haven't played. Maybe I'm sure Expedition 33 is very good, but is it Super Robot Wars Y good? Probably not. All right. Notable Game Awards announcements. This is not everything. This is just what I just put this list together of things that popped up that I thought were interesting. So there was a new trailer for Resident Evil Requiem, or Requiem, however you want to pronounce it. But just as a reminder, they did make the Q a 9 in the logo. And this trailer reveals the shocking information that you certainly don't know because it hasn't been leaked 5,000 different times. If you follow any vague information about this game, you've probably heard this before. But Leon S. Kennedy is in fact confirmed for this game. In fact, this information leaked even like a couple of days before the Game Awards trailer because if you pre-ordered the game on PSN, they had replaced the box art with the final box art, which has Leon on it. So it's like
I missed that. That's great.
Yeah, like if you haven't been following anything, like there have been rumors from like fairly respected insider sources that Leon was going to be in the next Resident Evil game since before Resident Evil Requiem was announced. And so it's just like, it is the worst kept secret about this game. Before we knew the title, everyone was like, I'm pretty sure Leon is in this game. This is like from reputable leakers for Resident Evil. But it looks
also just like common sense. They did two giant remakes. The most recent one was Resident Evil 4 starring Leon. Would he be in a new Resident Evil at some point? Oh, I don't know. Just the most popular character in the series.
Yeah, but like we haven't seen a new point in the Leon S. Kennedy timeline other than their weird CG movies since Resident Evil 6. We've had Chris Redfield in 7 and 8. Now it's Leon's turn, but he's clearly like, this looks like it's a co-lead game, right? You have Grace, who's the new character who's been featured in the trailers up till now, and then now we've got Leon. But he's like a gruff. He's punished Leon. He's like got a beard. He's tired of this bullshit. It looks pretty rad. And then you do get like, most of it's a very cinematic trailer if you haven't watched it, and it looks awesome. Like, I'm super excited for this game, but it does end very quickly with like a quick series of snippets of gameplay with Leon, and it's very Resident Evil 4 remake-esque, which I think is very exciting. And I like the idea of having a more hardcore survival horror style main character with Grace, and then you've got your kind of action hero stuff with Leon, which they had like a little bit of the kernel of that idea in 8, where you had that one sequence where you play as Chris that is like Resident Evil if it was a Call of Duty, and it's honestly kind of fucking awesome. But yeah, I'm extremely excited for this game. Leon looks badass. Resident Evil has just been on such a huge like upswing since 7, and it just feels like Capcom can do no wrong with this franchise, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, no, Resident Evil is one of the most exciting pieces of the video game landscape in recent years, and yeah, I'm honestly, Sean, I have been avoiding everything with this game because I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna love it, and I kind of don't want to know anything going in, and I'm down for it. All right.
So next up this is a very interesting announcement. I'm very curious about how this exists in the state of video games today. But we have a title, and we had a cinematic kind of pre-ordered CG trailer for a game called Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic. I've actually did type on the notes here. Fate of the Old Republic, which was announced, and it is directed by Casey Hudson, who is the director for Mass Effect. He's an old BioWare guy, left BioWare forever ago. I think he left BioWare, then came back to BioWare. I think he left at the end at some point. This is developed by a new studio that he has founded. And that studio and team has really come together this year. So this is very much a, like, we're announcing that we are starting this game is what, like, in terms of the timeline it looks like. But it is... there's not a lot of information about it. You know, the implication is that this is a sort of spiritual successor to the Knights of the Old Republic game. From what I understand, it is set in the timeline quite a bit later from when KOTOR is, but still way thousands of years before the actual movies. So, you know, there's a long period of time that you can call vaguely the Old Republic. And it is before the High Republic era, which is part of, like, Disney's has a whole line of novels and stuff set during the High Republic. Which is another period that they've done that. Like the Acolyte show was set in that. This is before all of those. So I'm obviously, look, I'm a huge KOTOR Knights of the Old Republic fan. Knights of the Old Republic is one of my favorite games ever. I think it's just an all-time great game. It's one of the best pieces of Star Wars media, just kind of bar none. And so I'm obviously very excited about the idea of this game, but also I'm an old man and I've been around the block with video games for a bit, and I'm very... I need to see more than just the announcement of a game title in a cinematic trailer for a game whose studio has never made a video game before and is a brand new studio, for me to, like, be fully kind of credible that this game will not just that this game will be good, that this game will be able to be released is a thing that just it's sad that I have to be skeptical about that, but it's a thing that I just have a deep cynicism about the Western video game industry at this point, and that kind of clouds some of my excitement I would otherwise have about this trailer.
But I mean, it's a fair skepticism, especially because this is like a super early announcement. They haven't really started making this game yet, right? I mean, it's so we'll have to see. You know, I hope it's good. I hope it comes out. I'm glad Casey Hudson is making a game again. He's a tremendously talented game director, and you know, that run of KOTOR through the 3 Mass Effects is a pretty fucking, like, you know, all-time great run of video game direction. So I hope this can lead somewhere. But yeah, you know, go ask the Beyond Two Souls studio. What's that studio called?
Oh God.
Detroit Become Human, that studio. But they were going to make a Star Wars game. Ask them what happened to that. You know, that. Now, to be fair, David Cage is a world-class asshole and a bad game director who mismanages his studio. I suspect Casey Hudson is good at this, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, the history of Star Wars is paved with dead, promising video games that never got made. I mean, it's just there's so many of them, whether you go back to Star Wars 1313, which is, like, a classic, like, all-time great E3 demo for a video game that was never made. You know, I would love that. I mean, I just am happy that about them saying, let's do Old Republic shit of just, like, it doesn't have to be Old Republic. I'm just like, get the fuck out of the movie timeline. For the love of God, we gotta get out of it. Like, it's just, there's only so much you can do in the orbit of the, I was gonna say 6 Star Wars movies, having forgotten that they made 3 more, ignoring the Star Wars stories. But we gotta get out of that shit. We just have to. For the love of God, please. I need to be able to have more than one motherfucker with a red lightsaber if we're gonna make a Star Wars video game. Like, we just can't do that. You know, I love the Star Wars Jedi games with Jedi Survivor. And it's like, it's about as good as you can do in that setting when being so restricted by, like, the kind of some of the stuff you can include. So it's very promising that they're like, hey, we can move out of that. We can go to a much older period in the Star Wars universe where it does not have to be, there's only one Sith and then there's a whole Jedi Order and we just have to redo the kind of prequel story. I'm very happy that they're willing to do that and Disney's going to sign off on that. And I just hope that the game can actually come together and be made.
Yeah, me too. Very, very much. All right, what else we got?
Next up, we had did you watch this trailer, Jonathan, for Divinity?
Oh, no, I watched none of this.
Okay.
The Game Awards can go... I don't care.
I mean, I didn't watch any of the Game Awards. I just watched some trailers on YouTube afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read about this, but...
Yes, if you want to you know, marvel at the hypocrisy of the video game industry, that there's all this controversy about certain games being censored on Steam and not being able to be sold to Game Horses and stuff. And then you watch the CG trailer for Divinity, which is a game I'm excited about because it's the new game by Larian Studios, who have obviously exploded in the video game kind of spotlight with Baldur's Gate 3. but Larian kind of cut their teeth on the series of games called Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. And this is like them going back to that franchise. They had said a long time ago after Baldur's Gate 3 came out that they were not doing another Baldur's Gate game and they wanted to go back to like other stuff. And so this is another game of the Divinity series. It is a full pre-rendered 3D CG trailer that's fantastic, but it's also incredibly grotesque. You see a man burn alive inside of a big wicker man. It's like a whole like kind of pagan ritual thing. And it's very well done. It's very eerie. It's very disturbing. And then the guy like explodes in like a fucking as like the devil's pimple. I don't know how else to fucking describe it. It's very gross. And then all the people get horribly killed. And it's like wildly violent. It's like an R-rated fucking hardcore horror movie level of gore. And it's just, it is kind of, it adds to the ambiance when you're watching the trailer. At least the version that I watched still had the like live feed from the audience in the background of the audio. And you have the disturbing like dissonance of this like pagan ritual of all these people dancing while this dude horribly burns alive as part of this like ritual sacrifice. And then it really helps that you get all these people that start cheering when the Larian Studios logo pops up. So you have like real life people that are so stoked. And then you have this just man who's screaming as he's slowly burning alive and turning into the devil's pimple and bursting. It's just like fucking, it's really fucked up. I'm sure it will be a great game. It's a crazy trailer. It is very hilarious. Like, I just, there's a lot of things where we look at the Game Awards and you're just go like, man, the video games are fucking, it's a weird thing. But I do love to imagine at like the Oscars showing a trailer for like the new Terrifier movie and have a clown just like graphically rip a man's head into little like shreds, It's just very funny.
It is very funny, but good for Larian to be able to
Yes.
like have a big moment like that, because I know Divinity Original Sin 2 is beloved,
Yes.
and it's a game I've even considered. I might even own it somewhere when it was like $5, and I'm sure it's great. So I'm happy to look at what they have next.
Yeah, I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 is like an all-time great game. Like, I think there's like a strong argument that is like the game of the generation so far for the PS5, Xbox Series X. Like, it is incredibly good. And so, yes, I'm down for whatever they're going to make next. Then we had a twofer announcement that Tomb Raider is back. It's been a little bit since we had a new Tomb Raider game. They're making they're making one new Tomb Raider game, and they're making, again, another Tomb Raider that they have made before. So Tomb Raider Catalyst. This is, as far as I can tell, it is very much like old school Lara Croft. It's not the kind of like, we're trying to make gritty Lara Croft with the previous trilogy of games. Is going back more to the like, swashbuckling action kind of style. But I think the impression I got from what developers said about it was like they're trying to do a sort of like fused universe timeline, even though the timeline would not possibly be able to be combined between the classic Tomb Raider and more modern Tomb Raider franchise. But they're trying to do some sort of vague, like the Survivor trilogy of games, as they call it, happened in Lara's past. And so it's sort of like meant to be a combination of all of like the Tomb Raider games in terms of the broad setting for this version of the character, but stylistically they're very much going back to classic Tomb Raider, and they're accompanying that with another remake of Tomb Raider 1, lest we forget that they already did this in the early Xbox 360 era, where they made Tomb Raider Anniversary, which was a remake of Tomb Raider 1. Like a full remake. Like, this is not the re-release. Like, they totally remade that game in what was the style of the 360 era Tomb Raider games. Now they're doing that again, but for Tomb Raider 1, and they're calling it Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis. And I believe Legacy of Atlantis is coming out next year, and the Catalyst is for 2027.
Yes, and this is also all, for those who don't know, tied into the new Tomb Raider TV series, because Amazon MGM now owns all the Tomb Raider stuff, and they are developing a new show that I think is going to be next year, begins filming next year, so it's probably a 2027 TV show, so it would be timed with Tomb Raider Catalyst, because this is all kind of tied in together, and that's the show that's being written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge and starring Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones as Lara Croft. So this is like, Amazon is doing kind of a multi-pronged like reintroduction to Tomb Raider here, which is interesting, and these games can be very good. I hope it's good. We shall see. I do think it's funny that we are getting another, not only, I mean, this is our second full remake. You can also just go buy Tomb Raider 1 in like the remaster collection that's out that apparently is very good. I should pick that up at some point because it looks cool. But yeah, you have plenty of Tomb Raider 1 if you want to go find it. Just compare and contrast all the versions.
Yes. Yeah, it is just funny that it's just a very old franchise in video games now that we're like on our third remake. I mean, we're coming up on our third remake of Halo 1. Why not a third remake of Tomb Raider 1? It's just we're in here for the trilogy of remakes is what we want to do for these games. Next up, probably the announcement that I was most excited about for a specific game that also had like good footage of the game is Control Resonant, or basically the sequel to Control. This is like all-time great game that Remedy made before Alan Wake 2. And this is announced for 2026, so it's supposed to come out next year. And it's a fucking fascinating trailer. If you've played Control 1, the protagonist of Control 1 was a character named Jessie Faden, and the plot of that game involved her infiltrating the bureau where her brother was captured. And it all has to do with like, this sort of like X-Files-esque bureau that investigates supernatural phenomena that exists in this like kind of crazy building called the Oldest House, that it is, just all kind of like weird alternate dimension shit. It's really cool. But Jesse and Dylan, when they were kids, were involved in this big, crazy paranormal incident, and Dylan was abducted by this bureau to be like experimented on, basically, and Jesse has infiltrated them to get her brother back. But her brother is sort of the antagonist of that game. The premise presented by the trailer is that Jesse has gone missing. The supernatural entity called the Hiss, which took over the Bureau in the events of the first game, has gotten out of the Bureau and is now infecting the world at large. And like the Earth seems completely fucked. Like it's just like total, like apocalyptic, not just in a like everyone's probably dying or dead, but in like the very fabric of space-time that Earth exists in is like twisting and transforming in crazy ways, almost like the movie Inception, where like reality's folding in on itself. But you are playing as Dylan, her brother, who is coming out of the oldest house to go into the real world, seemingly to go try to find where his sister is. And so you're playing as the brother instead of Jesse. I assume that probably at some point it will be a two-protagonist game, because Remedy has done that a lot. That's what they did in Alan Wake 2. But specifically, all of Dylan's gameplay in the trailer is not third-person shooter. It's almost like Devil May Cry. Like, he's using the crazy powers from Control to, like, build, like, these big, crazy melee weapons, and he's jumping and doing double jumps and air glides and stuff, and chaining together melee combos, and it's fucking sick and really nuts. And it's a crazy departure from Control, which was a, like, physics-based third-person shooter that was all about you using, like, some of that stuff, you had double jumps and you had, like, air dashes and stuff, but you're chaining together, like, kind of third-person shooter gunplay. And so it's an interesting departure to put a bunch of melee stuff in there. And my guess is that probably, if I were to make an assumption, that it will be a dual protagonist game. At some point, you'll get Jesse, and that there will be both a, like, the classic Control, but with new abilities thing with Jesse, and this new, like, kind of melee version of it with Dylan. I don't know. They didn't say that. All they showed was Dylan, but that was my kind of assumption. Either way, Remedy, obviously one of the best developers around. They've just produced some incredible games. Control is just an all-time great game, so I am super stoked for it. And it's cool to see that they're not just making a sort of like simple sequel to that game. They're kind of blowing up what Control is and looking at it from a totally different perspective, clearly, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, I still have... the Remedy games are ones I would love to catch up on at some point, so I need to do some of these, and maybe in advance of Control 2 here, which does look... I love that they are going ambitious. Like, that is the cool thing, because I did see some of the footage from this, like, on social media, and it's clear Remedy has been emboldened by their recent years of success to, like, do some crazy new stuff, and that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to play Control 1, it is that the PS5 version of that game is, like, incredibly fucking good. Because that game was really rough on PS4, but when they did the next-gen updates, like, that is a really, really good way to play. So if you have a Xbox Series X, PS5, obviously a modern PC, there's that version of that game is really, really technically solid.
Or if you have a Nintendo Switch, you can pay full price to do a cloud version of it that doesn't work.
Yeah, that is also an option. If you want to stream that game, and have it not really work well, you could do that. Absolutely. Hopefully they do a Switch 2 version. I'm sure that you could.
They should do a Switch. I'm sure they're working on that, and I honestly that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I that's one where all of the cloud versions on Switch you have to download. And this is at least like nice of them to not like completely trick you. You have to download a demo and try it before they let you buy the cloud version. And so I did that just to not because I was intending to buy it, but I wanted to see, and it did not work at all. That's the only time I've ever played any of Control. Is I played like the first 30 minutes on this terrible streaming Switch version, and it was very funny.
Yes, it's a great game. Probably should not be played that way. Next up, this is a fucking wild announcement that I just thought was hilarious. So Nagoshi Toshihiro, who is the historical director of the Ryuga Gotoku or Yakuza Studios, that he was director for all the games up through, I think he left before Yakuza Like a Dragon or Yakuza 7. But because he moved
after
on,
the Kiryu saga ended in 6.
Yeah, because he moved on to the Judgment games, and so he was the director for those. But Nagoshi was like the historical director for that studio and like basically the founder of that studio. He left several years ago and founded his own studio called Nagoshi Studios, and they have now announced the first game of what he's been making on since then. And it is a game that will look very familiar if you have ever seen a Yakuza game. It turns out he did not leave because he wasn't able to make the games he wanted to make. I'm sure that there's like other stuff of him wanting to like own his own studio. I'm sure there's like a pay thing involved with that and everything. But clearly he just wanted to keep on making Yakuza style games because he's making a game called Gang of Dragon, which very prominently stars the Korean actor Ma Dong-seok, who looks fucking awesome in this game. And he is clearly some sort of like, I don't know if he's a member of the Yakuza or the Korean Mafia or something. I mean, he's clearly part of the criminal underworld. If you have not watched the trailer, it is him with like a big fucking popped up collar shirt that's like mostly unbuttoned, and he's got a big gold chain on, and he's sitting at a bar, and a couple of punks come in and start fucking up shit at the bar, and then he gets up and is very tough, and then he beats the shit out of them, and then you get a like series of images of him walking around Kabukicho, which is the real-world Tokyo district that Kamurocho in the Yakuza games is very, very closely modeled off of, including a very lovely shot of the arch over Number 1 Street, or Ichiban-gai, in the actual Kabukicho, which is the same arc that the Number 1 Street in Kamurocho in the Yakuza games very famously, iconically uses as Kiryu comes into the town in the first game. And it's Ma Dong-seok's character walking around beating the shit out of like random people on the street, and he's doing like what are clearly heat actions for the Yakuza games. But it is like stylistically, if you watch this trailer and you told me this is a Yakuza spin-off game, I'd be like, yes, of course it is. What are you talking about? Look at it. But it is not. It is its own original franchise that is not called Like a Dragon. It is called Gang of Dragon, and they're very different things. And it is. I'm super excited about it because nobody makes these kinds of games other than Ryuga Gotoku Studios, so I think it's totally fair to have somebody else in the world making games like this. I just thought it was incredibly hilarious that he left and he just went and made another Yakuza game somewhere else.
Was there any kind of indication of like what kind of game? Is it like a brawler? Is it like what kind of gameplay? Do we know?
It was kind of hard to tell from a memory of how much of it was like cinematics versus how much of it was gameplay, but it looked to me like it was third-person brawler gameplay where you're grabbing dudes and grabbing objects from the environment and hitting them. I guess it's not confirmed if it's like that kind of pseudo-open world structure the Yakuza games have, but all of it was very conspicuously taking place in Kabukicho, which sure made it look like it probably was. You are just walking around Kabukicho, and there are probably a bunch of punks walking around that see you and go, hey, and run over and try to fight you, and you pick up a bicycle and beat the shit out of them with a bicycle. I'm just going to guess that's probably what playing this game is going to be like. Like, if you want to see what playing this game is, maybe just play, Yakuza 6 or, any of the more recent Yakuza games that have the brawler gameplay, play some of the Judgment games. Probably you'll get pretty close to what this game's going to be. It's very funny.
That's awesome.
Yes. Super excited about it. Again, I'm making fun of how similar it is, but again, nobody else makes games like that. I will take more games like that, please, and thank you. And obviously, it'll be detached from the literal story, so obviously it'll be all new characters and all that kind of stuff, so that's exciting. The last one I threw on here, mostly just because I just wanted to mention it, because I feel like this is a franchise that it's about time I get around to, which is Ace Combat. There's a new Ace Combat game they're making called Ace Combat 8, Wings of Theve, Theve. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean. But this is your, big dramatic jet game like Top Gun, but it's set in like a world called the Strange Real is their like word for what the setting of these games is, and it's some sort of like weird alternate reality Earth, and it's like very heightened melodramatic epic plot lines that sounds very like sort of mech anime influenced. It just feels like I'm sure I would love Ace Combat if I played one of these games. I've just never gotten around to it. And I watched the trailer. I'm like, God, I need to fucking play one of these games. And maybe this will be the one I start with. Maybe I'll just, when this comes out, maybe I'll just play Ace Combat 8 Wings of Thief and then just start a whole new obsession for myself and go back and play every old Ace Combat game. But I watched the trailer. I'm like, this looks pretty fucking good. This definitely seems like something I would like. I definitely should play these games.
Man, it sounds like you're almost trying to transition us into our next segment, Sean. Where you're going to talk about maybe a different time you've done this recently. So yeah, that was the longest news segment I think we've ever done on Purely Academic, but there's a lot going on.
There's still a lot of shit going on, and a lot of it is very harrowing, but we are, there's some cool video games coming out, and they're putting out the Star Wars the way you liked it. So, not everything's bad.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, you want to move on to the stuff, Sean?
Yeah, how should we tackle the stuff, Jonathan?
Well, I've got two major video games to talk about. Honestly, probably my two favorite games that have come out this year so far for me personally. And you've got some games, and I know you've got a big rabbit hole. And I'm going to just say right now, we're going to save your rabbit hole for the end of the stuff segment.
Yes, I think that's the best way to do this.
Why don't I start with a game let's start with like the most recent big game that people will probably want to hear us talk about, which is, I'm going to talk about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, a game that... Man, I should have gone and looked up, like, which episode of Weekly Stuff we talked about the announcement of this game on, because it must have been, like, in the 200s or something, because this game was announced with the Switch in 2017, just as Metroid Prime 4. For those who don't remember, it was originally under development by some division of Bandai Namco, we don't know exactly what. In 2019, I believe, it was taken away, and they announced they were Shinya Takahashi, the producer at Nintendo, announced they were restarting development in, like, one of the craziest videos that Nintendo's ever put out. Because it was this like, bow to camera, we're very sorry, the game was bad, or it wasn't meeting our expectations or whatever. And they gave it to the people who probably should have always been working on it, which is Retro Studios in Texas, who are the people who originally made Metroid Prime 1, 2, 3. They then made Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and that was 2014, and they had not had a new game released since then. But we know in the mid-2010s they were working on a potential new Star Fox game that got scrapped, and then they were working on their own original game that when Nintendo came to them with Metroid Prime 4, they put on the back burner and worked on this. So this is our first full new retro game in a long time. It's our first new Metroid Prime game since 3 in 2007, so it has been 18 years since the last Prime. And this is also a big Nintendo Switch 2 release. It is on Nintendo Switch 1 as well, which was its original target hardware, but the Switch 2 version is extremely impressive. And yeah, this is, you guys all know that I'm a big Metroid fan. I love Metroid. Metroid Prime 1, gun to my head today, I would probably say is my favorite game of all time. It's like probably the one that I've like shifted to as like my all-time fave. And I love Prime 2 and 3 as well. And so I was excited for Prime 4. I was also a little wary because this game's development was like weird and circuitous. And over the course of 2025, Nintendo weirdly was quiet about it. Like this is a big launch window game and Nintendo didn't advertise it a ton. They put it in this December slot, none of which is like the end of the world. Nintendo, like Metroid is not a huge seller for Nintendo. Like the highest selling Metroid game ever is Metroid Dread, the most recent Switch one, which is 5 million copies. And if you compare that to like, any other big Nintendo franchise, that's nothing. So, like, I kind of understand it, but I was still a little wary. The reviews on this game have been mixed. Some people really like it. Some people dislike it and have been vocal about that. And I am very much in the like it camp. I finished this game last night. I finished it at 100% completion, so I got all of the logbook stuff, every item, I saw the special ending, all that good stuff. So I completed this game at 100%, and it took me a little over 20 hours of playtime, so it's a nice big meaty game. And I don't think this is a perfect game. I think it definitely has some issues here and there. It is. You can tell that this is like, while it is Retro Studios and a lot of the institutional knowledge is still there to do this, they still have, some of the people who were there and all of that. it has been almost 20 years. There are a lot of new people at the studio. In the meantime, they've worked on very different games. And this does kind of have that feeling of not a completely new studio, because it is very true to what Metroid is, I think, in a lot of ways, but basically a new team trying something like this for the first time. And you get some of that, like, first-time imperfections in the same way that, like, I would say Donkey Kong Country Returns, which I just recently replayed, I think that game has the fundamentals of a Donkey Kong Country down 100% perfect, but then there's some stuff around the edges that are imperfect that then when they made Tropical Freeze, they really kind of blew off the hinges of it and made this incredible masterpiece. And I think Prime 4, of all of Retro's games, probably does feel most like DKC in that way, where sometimes it plays it a little safe, sometimes the things it tries that are new don't work entirely, but I still really like it. Like, Retro Studios are some of my favorite developers of the 21st century. Their 5, now 6 games that they've made are 6 of my favorite games of the 2000s. I really love what they do. They have an incredible amount of polish in their games. They execute at an incredibly high technical level, and more than just about anyone, their games just play phenomenally well. And, like, on that level, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a unmitigated success. It's incredible. Like, it plays so beautifully. It is like the best controlling of the Metroid Prime games. Just the way they have made your basic moving, shooting, scanning, the different, like, beams that Samus gets over the course of the adventure. So you have your normal sort of, fire missile beam, and then you also have fire, ice, and lightning, and the way all of those work and the upgrades you get, all of the other upgrades you get to the morph ball and everything over the course of it. The big motorcycle Samus has now, which is called Viola, which feels like that's for me, because I played Viola in high school, and I love Metroid. So thank you very much, Retro. The motorcycle is awesome. It feels so good to ride. It's the kind of thing where even when you are in a completely empty stretch of desert and you have nothing technically to do with the motorcycle, it is just fun to manipulate and drive around in. All of that. It just is a dream to play. It feels great to go around and, fight monsters, do the boss fights, or just walk around and explore these environments. And then on a technical level, this is full stop the most impressive game technically that Nintendo has ever published. Like, kind of without comparison, because it is, like, even if this were on PlayStation or Xbox, this would be an incredibly polished title, because this is a game that looks phenomenal. The art direction is great. The graphics are pretty stunning. It has some of the best lighting I have seen in years, like, just tremendously impressive, with an HDR setting that is outstanding. Like, some of the best HDR I have ever seen in any video game. Just the way it does the thing that I think the best HDR does, where it makes the image look three-dimensional. It, like, draws you into it. It allows that lighting to draw your attention to parts of the frame, to have really, like, inky black darkness, but also really vivid highlights when it needs that. It's an incredible HDR pass, and all of that runs at either a smooth 4K 60, and it's kind of a composite 4K. What they've done is Samus's visor and all of the UI is 4K, and then other parts of it will be at more of a variable resolution, but still very high, like 1440p or up, and looks very good, or a consistent 1080p at a completely locked 120 frames per second, which, like, again, that's a pretty rare thing to get on, like, the more powerful consoles, of, like, a solid locked 120 FPS with really great image quality. You can get 120 FPS in some games, but you'll sacrifice image quality. It's pretty rare to get both. And that's how I played it. I played it completely on my TV. This is the rare Switch game where I didn't even touch the handheld version because it looks so good on the TV, and Metroid Prime is the kind of game you want filling your vision. And it is just technically the most rock-solid thing. It looks phenomenal. It's got, as many Metroid games do, it's got your multiple kind of different biomes you go through. It's got a forest, it's got a lava area, a snow area, but the most impressive is the Volt Forge area, which is this, like, lightning, like, it's a big tower that is being consumed by this, like, thunderstorm. And that area, particularly with the HDR, is just incredible. It is like, there's genuinely something destabilizing about playing a Nintendo game on the Switch hardware that is one of the most technically impressive feats of gaming I've seen in years. It's just not something you go to Nintendo for lots of wonderful things, but not usually to play something that feels cutting edge. This game, like, yes, it was developed with the Switch 1 in mind, and my understanding is it plays very well there as well, although at 60 FPS, obviously. but it looks incredible. I think you could put this on a PlayStation and tell someone it's running on that, and they'd be like, yeah, no, this is awesome. Like, it really is the most competitive technical package Nintendo, I think, has put together in the 2000s.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've obviously have not played it because I don't own a Switch or a Switch 2, but watching some video of it, yes, and it's particularly it's the art style. You know, it's that classic thing of where, like, I look at it and my brain goes, oh, that looks like a modern version of Halo 4, when of course Halo 4 is like trying to look like Metroid Prime did. But yes, like yes. The art style is obviously absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as I know, I believe Retro now has probably a good amount of people at it who worked on yes. Halo at this point, because a lot of the people who worked on Halo are also located in Texas, all of that stuff. And yeah, honestly, Halo 4 isn't a bad comparison for this game in a lot of ways, where, like, it's easy now we know where 343 Industries wound up going with Halo to look at Halo 4 as a big disappointment, but that game was impressive when it came out. Yes, it was a technical marvel. It played very well. It's a really solid Halo campaign. I don't think it's quite as good as the Bungie games, but, like, if Halo 4 had been the floor of 343 and they'd really built on it, they'd be in great shape today. The problem is Halo 4 wound up being their ceiling, and they never reached it again, even remotely. Is that yes. a fair comparison?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Halo 4 is 100% the best game that 343 made, at 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say this game, I think this is a better Metroid game than Halo 4 is a Halo game, but I think it's a similar feeling. Like, cards on the table, I don't think this is as good as Metroid Prime 1, 2, 3. I also was not going in expecting it to reach those heights, because Prime 1, 2, 3 were made in this incredible, like, 4-year fever dream, 5-year, 2002 to 2007, in a very different era for gaming, and they're a very tight series. Like, Prime 1, 2, 3 tell this kind of big 3-part story. They iterate very clearly on one another. It's been 20 years. Lots has happened. I didn't need Prime 4 to be the best Metroid Prime game. I needed it to be a good Metroid game that I think gets the fundamentals, and that is the thing it does very well. And I think the things that it occasionally misses are kind of in the Halo 4 sense, where it goes a little further afield, or where it maybe feels a little too staid and traditional. But on the whole, I do want to say, like, my overall impressions of this game are very positive. It's incredibly fun to play. It gets all the Metroid fundamentals down very pat. This has some of the most fun backtracking in any Metroid game, and I know that sounds weird, but if you're a Metroid player, you know how much fun the backtracking is, where, like, this game just is very good at signaling for you, like, hey, here's cool stuff you can't use yet, but go ahead and remember it, and it gives you lots of tools within the game to mark stuff on the map that you didn't always have before. And then when you get new stuff, it's very fun, accessible, easy to get to all of those areas and go find your shit and do all of your upgrades, and all of that stuff is very fun. One thing that annoys me, though, about the discourse around this game is that I've seen a lot of reviews of Metroid Prime 4 that are reviewing a game that does not exist, and are reviewing the game based on, I think, their expectations of what Metroid is, not so much what this game is actually presenting in the context of the series as a whole. And I would kind of put that into, I made some notes here, I would put that into a couple of buckets. Like, I've seen complaints that this game has an opening prologue section that is action-heavy, and a lot of people saying it's ripping off Halo. No, this is just a Metroid tradition. It's so well worn that, like, all Metroidvanias do this. It started in Super Metroid. It's there in Prime. It's there in Dread. You always start with a little focused linear area where you have all of your shit and you get to fight, and then Samus loses everything and you have to build back to that. Castlevania Symphony of the Night does this. It's just, it's a classic thing that these games do to give you a sense of what you'll be building back up to or building off of if you're going in a different direction. This game does a little bit of both. And, like, so that's not a problem. I think people making that complaint have never played Metroid before. And that's honestly a theme I've seen in quite a few reviews of this. Another complaint I've seen is that this is a game with discrete, separate areas rather than one big unified world. And I will grant that, like, this version of it is not the platonic Metroid ideal that I have, that I think is something like Super Metroid or the original Metroid Prime, where the entire world is one deeply interconnected maze. But this is also very far from unprecedented. Within the Prime series, Prime 4 is structured almost exactly like Metroid Prime 3, albeit it has a hub world connecting everything instead of a spaceship where you travel between planets. Metroid Samus Returns does this as well, where the areas are technically connected in a linear row, but they're all separate in terms of exploration. And of course, we've seen other Metroid-style games go this way too, like the jump from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2. And this is a very Dark Souls 2-esque setup where you have a hub world world, and then 5 branching off paths that are separate. It's also just the Zelda thing. It is Zelda Ocarina of Time, it's Hyrule Field, and then you have your discrete dungeons. In fact, if you're someone who likes Zelda games and maybe misses that classic Zelda setup, but you've never tried a Metroid, Prime 4 would be a really good one to start you off with, because there's always been a lot of shared DNA between Metroid and Zelda, and I think if you like one, you'll like the other. But this one has a very Ocarina of Time-esque structure to it, where you start in one area, you kind of do your first dungeon, and then you have, it is technically a linear game, but you have this hub you keep returning to as you go to the different dungeons, and the areas in this are structured more like dungeons than the big interconnected kind of Metroidvania thing, and I'm fine with that. Again, it's not my favorite version of Metroid, but it's a version I've enjoyed before and that I think can be done very well, in the same way that, like, Dark Souls 2 has a lot going for it in comparison to other ones. You wouldn't just write it off because of that.
Yeah, like Dark Souls 2's main problem is not the hub spoke structure.
Yes.
I mean, it does have a couple of places where it doesn't use that particularly effectively, but its problem is mostly with how it messes with the mechanics in some clunky ways, and then the overall pacing of like bosses and stuff like that becomes very tedious in that game. Like that's that game's issue.
Yeah. I don't, again, like you could also compare this to Demon Souls. I don't mind this structure at all if it's done well, and I think this is mainly done well. You have the 5 separate areas. Some of them are phenomenal. The Volt Forge area, which is the second big one you get access to, is an all-time great Metroid area. Like, it is put it in the canon, one of the best things Metroid has ever done. It's super cool. It's the area where your bike, the Viola, is built, and as you move through the dungeon effectively, you activate different parts of this factory and bring it back online to start building this bike for you. And as you go through, the music, kind of like the Persona 3 dungeon as you go up the stairs, keeps building on itself until you have the full rip-roaring version of the Volt Forge track, which just has a shredding electric guitar in it. And it's awesome. It's one of the coolest Metroid areas ever. There are other ones that I think are more middling. Like, I think the fire magma area in this one is called Flare Pool, and it is probably my least favorite, like, volcano area in a Metroid game, and every Metroid game has a volcano area. It's not bad, but it's kind of middling. The ice area is pretty cool and has some really cool places to go. There's also a big kind of cave system, which is the mines, which is the most action-focused area, but it's also very, like, horror driven, where you have a lot of like monsters coming up and attacking you, and I think that's a fun change of pace. Like, the biggest thing it does well is that each of those 5 areas are very different in terms of like how you interact with them, and so there's a really good sense of variety to the game and all of that. And then the third thing I would say that I don't get the complaints about is, and I'm mixed on this, but this specific element is that the game includes some hints about where to go. We'll talk about the human characters in a minute, Miles McKenzie and friends, because I have mixed feelings about that, and I think a lot of people do. But one thing I've seen is that there's a lot of people saying that, like, this game holds your hand too much, or that they're constantly telling you what to do and where to go, and it's just not true. It's just not true. I was expecting, based on the press coverage, that this would be like God of War Ragnarok, where Atreus and Ymir never stop telling you how to solve the fucking puzzles. And that annoyed me in that game, because I would be solving the puzzles, having fun, and then Ymir would tell me, go over here, and if you looked at that, and I'd be like, shut up. And then they did finally patch in a thing to shut him up, but I'd already beat the game. That doesn't happen in this game. What you have is that Miles McKenzie and the other characters replace a thing all the Prime games used to do, which was where if you were lost, it would pop up on your map, and it would show you at a top-level view, hey, here's where you are ultimately going. But it wouldn't tell you how to get there. It wouldn't tell you all the things to do on the way. When you're in an individual room solving a puzzle, it would never tell you what to do. And that's how Prime 4 is structured as well. All of the hints it gives you are those top-level things of like, hey, have you been to this area yet? If you go to that area, then you're on your own. And so I do wish there was a toggle to like turn off that kind of hint system entirely. That's how Prime 1 did it. But I will say, compared to a lot of other games now that are aggressively handholdy, this doesn't even kind of register for me on the level of like insulting your intelligence, because a lot of games are way worse than this.
I wonder how much of it for that is like is having it be personified in a character telling it to you bothers you more than the game presenting this information in a flat, almost like narrator, or almost like it's like Samus is thinking of it kind of way. Right. Because I do think that is like one of the reasons why people had like such a harsh response to that in God of War Ragnarok, and then Horizon Forbidden West didn't have it as bad as Ragnarok, but had a similar thing of where Aloy kind of like verbalizes it very directly of what she's thinking about. And I remember thinking it's like in Forbidden West with Aloy, it felt better because to me there was something about like Aloy is doing it that felt more like natural, whereas a third person character telling you directly like, well, what if you took another look at this box? I'm like, yeah, I fucking know. I am. Right. Okay, asshole. I am looking at this fucking box. Okay. And it's like that feeling when, let's say that, you're, this is just a totally hypothetical scenario. Let's say your parents have bought like a big Christmas, like artificial Christmas tree that's kind of clunky and heavy, and it doesn't quite fit together right, and they have you come over and they're asking you to put it together, and you're like, okay, sure, and you're taking a look at it, you're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to give you hints. They're like, hey, I mean, what if you try to do this? Like, I did try to do that, okay? It's like it didn't work because it doesn't fit like that. Now let me just look at it like, well, but what if we did? No, I don't think that would work. Because it just turns out when you're trying to figure something out and you're working on something and having somebody else chiming in bothers you. Whereas if like I looked at the instruction manual and the instruction manual said, well, if you twisted this that way, then maybe it would, that doesn't bother you as much. I think it might be just like how the information, the context in which the information is presented probably is the thing that like bothers people about it, less so that the information itself exists.
I agree with that to an extent. The difference I would make is that this game is never giving you that kind of granular instruction the way you were using with your Christmas tree example. Like, I will say, every time Miles chimed in, he just told me something I already knew and was going to do. Like, and it was the broad level stuff. There was never a point where I was trying to solve an interesting challenge in the course of the game that it ruined the challenge for me. And that's where I draw the line, right? If you want to give me the broad, like, hey, remember, you have to go here to beat the game. Whatever. Every game communicates that in some way or another. Would I prefer it not be voiced and all of that? Yes, I would. But it also, like, it's pretty small in the grand scheme of what this game is doing and did not bother me in that way. Like, I think if people are expecting the God of War Ragnarok thing, or even like the 3DS era Pokemons where it just never stopped tutorializing, this game is not doing that. And if there are issues with the human characters, I think they're different than this issue, which is what came out in the preview period of the game, because Nintendo, I can understand where if in the hour-long preview they gave press a lot of what you played had Miles in it, you would blow this out of proportion. Playing the game in full, Miles shows up he's with you for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then he's on his own in this hub area of the world, and he's never with you on the adventure, giving you hints in rooms. And I think if you were reporting on it from the preview period, you might worry that that's what was going to happen, but it's not what's in the actual game.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my impression looking from the outside in, is exactly what you just said, of like that the previews were probably a very poorly selected section of the game to preview.
Yes.
Because that was the entire conversation about it, was this fucking dope who's there, which, like, again, as somebody who hasn't played the game, but just like looked at some of the videos, and then I've read some of the like player impressions of it, because I found the reception of the game interesting, just because I think there's something about the aggregate score on Metacritic being like an 8 out of 10 I found interesting, because I would expect it to be lower or higher, and this kind of like milquetoast middle score that it's landed on, I just think it's like kind of an interesting place for this game to have ended up at, in terms of the broader reception. But like the impression I get from like the actual responses of the game are that like people were really worried about this fucking this dipshit guy who is in all the previews, and that it isn't that big of a deal. Like, that's not the main complaint I've seen from most people, but that it's just like it's a thing that kind of like ruins some of the vibes around the game, that like you're getting lost wandering the world. And honestly, like the thing that it reminds me a lot of, and this is the thing that has never bothered me with this game, but it's a thing that I fucking hear constantly, it's become a meme about the game, is Navi in Ocarina of Time, and we're being like, hey, listen, and popping up the little box or whatever, it's like, oh, it's Water Temple or whatever, let's go there. That never bothered me with that game. But I know that, like, it is a thing that just, like, really has pissed people off historically. And I think it's that thing of just, like, there's a vibe of you wandering around out in the world, getting lost, just doing your own thing. And then you just have some dipshit on your radio being like, oh, hey, what if we went over here and turned on the forge?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the human characters. You have Miles, you meet a couple others over the course of the game. Samus has a little band of human friends from the Federation who landed on this planet with her, and you meet them over the course of the game. I do think a lot of this has been blown out of proportion, even as I don't think it's perfect. But here's the thing. Having played the full game and seen the scope of what they were doing, there are parts where it annoys me more than others. Miles doesn't really annoy me. There's a character you meet named, I think it's Takami, who is like this sniper you meet in the ice level, and he's just this very like terse guy who, over the course of the game, you realize has more kind of emotionality within him. He's actually, I think, a pretty cool character, and I like what they do with him. But through those first three areas, the green area, the Volt Forge, and then the ice area, you are mostly on your own. I do think it's a problem. The fourth and fifth areas, which is Flare Pool and the mines, you have much more of the human characters because they're all together now and they're with you, and it does cut into the vibes a little bit. But if you're playing this game and you're feeling like it's cutting into the vibes a little bit, one thing I will encourage you to do is stick it through to the end, because this game does. There's a part in the mines section where the game, I'm trying to be careful here without spoiling anything, where it almost does something really interesting with all the humans, and then it cops out on it. And I went, oh, that kind of sucks. And I was kind of down on that element of the game. And then the actual ending of Prime 4 reverses that cop-out and does something, I think, pretty interesting with the human characters. And the actual ending, like Samus's last scene when you beat the game, is one of my favorite Metroid scenes ever. And it had me reflecting on the entire use of the human characters, because I think as you play, you do have a split reaction. Sometimes the humans are very annoying because they just talk like gruff military dudes and it's kind of bad writing, and I think that could be better. Sometimes they're kind of endearing in the way that, like, there's one girl, Nora, who's like kind of a Samus fangirl and thinks Samus is really cool, because of course humans would think Samus is really cool, and she's kind of endearing. But through it all, Samus is completely silent, and you can very much read your reactions onto Samus. Like, it's actually kind of a fun part I realized of, like, often the humans would be talking and I'd be off on the other side of the room scanning stuff and investigating, and I'd be like, well, this could also just be what Samus is thinking of, like, she's got an adventure, she's not going to tell these people to fuck off, she's not going to abandon them and not save their lives if they need help, but she's also not going to really give them the time of day because she's got Samus Aran stuff to go do, right? And, like, that could also kind of be her attitude. And then I think as the way the game ultimately progresses, I think the creative intent of what Retro is going for here, and I think it's an interesting creative intention. It doesn't work 100%, but I like it, which was to sort of do this story where relatively regular people are dropped into a typically lonely Samus Aran adventure and kind of see how that would go. And I think it ends on such a good, powerful point that to me, the experiment was worth it. And I liked it in the end because I think it ultimately winds up saying something with Samus, her relationship to humanity, how alien, like fundamentally alien Samus is. This game had me thinking about a lot. Like, a lot of people, I saw some frustration. This is the dumbest complaint I saw, is people like, why doesn't Samus talk when they talk to her? Because she's a silent video game character. Fuck off. Why doesn't Link talk? Because he's silent. You know, it's just a thing. Some video game characters don't talk, and that's okay. We don't need to make them talk. You know what? We tried that once. It's called Metroid Other M, and it's fucking terrible and bad. Some video game characters don't need to talk. My headcanon is Samus does not speak English. Samus was raised by bird people. She was raised by the Chozo. Her suit will translate these people for her, but she can't talk back to them because it would all be squawks. She's a bird. Really, deep down, she's biologically a human, but in her heart, she is a bird. And so she does not understand these people. They do not really understand her, but I think the game comes to an interesting point that dovetails really nicely with the story of this alien civilization, because this is another Metroid game where Samus arrives on a planet of dead aliens and is their chosen one and has to, like, revive their blah, blah, blah. Which, you know what? It's been done before, but it's been done before for a reason. It's a good story for Samus because this is what she does.
How can you be expected to scan things if everyone isn't already dead there?
Exactly. You need dead aliens. This is how it works. And so, to me, by the end, I thought there was a productive tension in how the humans are used that leads to this kind of striking, dour, but also hopeful ending, and a really lovely final scene. So that's kind of where I come down on it. I don't think it's done perfectly. I think integrating talking characters into a game about a silent protagonist is always tricky. You know what? Halo 4 also had a difficulty with this in terms of, like, how much does the Master Chief talk? How active will we make him in the plot? And I think it's a clumsiness in that game that ultimately works more than it doesn't in 4, but also led to some of the problems that you saw in, like, 5 and 6 and all of that. So it depends, but I think it's done more well than not well here was my ultimate takeaway.
Interesting, because again, like all I've done is like read some people's impressions. I went to the Resetera gaming forum and just pulled up the thread for Metroid Prime 4 and kind of just skimmed through some of it because I was curious about what, like, beyond reviews or like people playing the game. And pretty universally, I thought that people didn't particularly like. I don't know what the ending of the game is, but most people did not particularly like the ending based on that. And the other criticism I saw, I'm curious your thoughts on this, as I just saw a lot of people complain that they felt that the game was overly linear and they didn't like the desert, like going through the desert area. That was like, for me, like almost every single person just did not like that element of the game.
Okay, this was going to be my next thing. So I'll put the desert aside for a second because this is a sticky issue in the game. The linearity thing, every Metroid fan complains about every Metroid game being too linear. Like, this is something that happens every time a Metroid game comes out. I do think this is it is more linear than I would like a Metroid game to be. It is also not completely without precedent in the Metroid series. I would compare this structurally very much to Metroid Fusion from the Game Boy Advance, which I think is a pretty good Metroid game, but not like top tier. And I think Prime 4 is a pretty good Metroid game, but not top tier. And it does kind of point you linearly more than I would like, but it still has all of the good Metroid stuff, like better than Fusion did, of like unlocking new stuff, going back to old areas. I think it has a decent balance of like player controlled pacing of like when do you want to go search for things, and having some just big open goals that run throughout the game that you can kind of tackle however you want versus the linearity of areas. But yeah, it's also kind of like, again, Souls games have this too, of like the linearity versus not, like the Dark Souls 1 versus 2 problem. And I always point out to people, it's the thing that like Metroid Prime 1 did, that Super Metroid did, is super fucking hard. The thing where you have one giant interconnected clockwork world. And even within those series, that is not how most of those games work, because it's like really hard to do. And I'm not making that as an excuse necessarily, but like there's a reason why you have games like Metroid Prime 3 that do this differently as well. And I think Prime 3 is a better version of what Prime 4 is doing, because Prime 3 has your kind of, as you were saying, Sean, your kind of like spoke structure where you have like a hub and then other areas. I think Prime 3's individual areas are more interesting in terms of their density and how they loop back on themselves and all of that stuff. But I still think Prime 4 is enjoyable, again, on the more linear side of what I would like, but it didn't kill the game for me, and I don't think it's completely out of like Metroid history and tradition. It's like not out of the question. Now, the big thing this game tries that I think is a mixed bag is the way the hub world works, which is that this is another stupid criticism I saw from some critics, calling this was like trying to be an open world game. At no point is this trying to be an open world game. This is a Zelda-style hub game. But that hub world is a big desert. The desert is mostly empty. The main thing you do in the desert is ride around the motorcycle and find green crystals, because you have to get a certain number of the green crystals to beat the game. I think this is an interesting swing. There's things about the hub world I like. And I think it's a cool structure to have a big central area. If you're going to do a Metroid game that is this kind of hub world structure, I like the idea of having a hub world that has kind of a different set of controls. In this case, you have the bike that you're driving around on, and it has a different pace to it that you're out there to kind of like, I liked it as kind of a cooling off. If you go do one of the big dungeons, and then you can come back to the hub world and just kind of mess around for a bit, go find the green crystals. There's a couple of shrines you can find in the world that have their own kind of mini dungeons to them. What I wish is that it had more of that. Like, I do think if it had like double the number of those shrines to go find stuff at, if it had more pickups in the world, and if there were maybe more puzzles around the green crystals, not just kind of finding them on the map, I actually think it would be a pretty cool, successful experiment, because I think what it does for the pacing of the game on the whole, I liked, because I enjoyed coming out of those really concentrated Metroid first-person segments and just fucking around on my bike in the desert. It does not bother me that it is a desert. I think it is like emotionally, thematically relevant to the game that the center of this alien planet is this completely dead environs, and I think it's effectively creepy in interesting ways. I don't need it to be completely dense with stuff to do. I don't need them to make it an Ubisoft style, like find all the towers, do a checklist, any of that. I think it could just be a little more alive with some stuff out there. And there are some things that happen in the open world that suggest to me that maybe Retro had bigger plans for it. Like the guy I was talking about earlier, Takabi, the sniper dude, will show up at different parts of the hub world, and you'll see smoke in the air, and you can go find him in the smoke as he's made a little campfire, and then he'll talk to you about his like past and history. And those are some of the most effective moments in the game in terms of characterization, because to me, that's Samus. Samus is happy to learn about other cultures and peoples, and this guy is talking about, like, his homeworld and his religion, which is interesting, and, like, the god he prays to, and Samus is very interested in this, because I think Samus is always interested in that kind of stuff, and those are nice little characterization moments, and I would bet others were planned in that open world and just didn't make it to the final game. Just as I think those shrines, there probably were more of those kinds of things that didn't make the final cut, and I think there's probably a more successful version of that that has all that. But again, this is kind of in the vein of, same with the humans, of I think it's an interesting new swing. I see the creative intent and I like the creative intent. I don't think it's like a 10 out of 10 execution, but it also doesn't kill the game for me. I overall enjoyed it more than I didn't. I can see the criticisms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think that's where, I mean, again, it's been rated an 8 out of 10 game, and I think that's like kind of the thing. I think that's where it's landed in this kind of interesting spot, where it's like, I don't really see anyone calling it a bad game, but I also think like it's just like a game that like it is that Halo 4 thing, where it's like, God, it does like a lot of things so well, but there's just some elements of it that are like miscalibrated or something. And so it just ends up in this sort of like weird spot where that is that kind of 8 out of 10 slot, which just feels like not a lot of games land right there. Most games are either like a little bit better or they're a little bit worse. But there's something about, it's why I thought it's just like that, the reception I found just like very interesting. Because it's sort of like it landed in this strange point, especially for a game that's been in development for so long. You expect it either to be like, oh my god, it's like this masterpiece, or it just is something that completely fell apart, and not something that's like sort of in neither of those things really. At least it's based on the impressions.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's fun. I think it scratches the Metroid itch. If you're comparing this to other recent Metroid games, Metroid Dread is very clearly the better Metroid game on Switch. Metroid Dread, I think, is like an S-tier all-time great Metroid. It was also the second game Mercury Steam had made in like that 5-year period, because they did the Metroid Samus Returns on 3DS. Right. And so Metroid Dread was this big payoff of that, where they were given the license to really make something new. This was always pitched as Metroid Prime 4. And it was always like, for Retro, they had to come back and do this after spending a decade making Donkey Kong games, trying other stuff, doing it on new hardware. In many ways, this game is super impressive. Like, again, the technical thing, I don't think you can just say that as like an also ran part of the game. It's a really polished AAA video game package that like gives you your money's worth in terms of eye candy and performance and all of that stuff in a way that like, yeah, this looks like a game that took 6 or 7 years to make. And are there things about it that aren't fully baked? Yes, but also I guess it's fairly in line with like my higher level expectations. I was never really expecting this to be like an all-time Metroid, because I don't think its development circumstances were necessarily conducive to that, because they weren't doing something entirely new, but they also were having to rebuild from a certain point, if that makes sense, right? And so, but I also could have seen it going much worse than it did. And like, I think this is again, I would compare it to Donkey Kong Country Returns, and like this is, I think this game proves that Retro still has their talent. I think they still know Metroid very well, and I would love to see them do a Prime 5 and really be able to like do what Tropical Freeze was to Donkey Kong Country Returns, because I think they've clearly got that in them, and this game has a lot of stuff in it I really loved. And I'm baffled by people not liking the ending. The ending of this game is beautiful. This ending is really cool. The final boss fight, you do have to like kind of babysit your supporting troops, although I never got to a fail state with that, where like if you didn't heal them, you lost the game. And I mostly enjoyed the final boss fight, and I think Silex is a good Saturday morning cartoon villain in this game, and the music there is really cool. But no, the actual like ending is neat. I thought it was cool.
I mean, I can only assume that if you got your 100% scan and all that stuff, you have Samus is drifting through, and then Miles McKenzie's like, oh, it's finally over. And then Samus says, no, I think it's just starting. And she takes off her helmet, and it was Donkey Kong the whole time.
I'd be into that. Fuck it. One last thing, I did just mention the music. This is weirdly my biggest complaint with the game, is that the last half of the game, like the ice area, flare pool, and the mines, have very little or just not very noticeable music, which is sad because everywhere else in this game, the music is fucking phenomenal. Like, definitely, if you have the Nintendo Music app, go listen to what they've put up there, because the sound for the Fury Green area, the main, like, 6-minute theme of the game that plays at the beginning and then through the end credits, especially Volt Forge, it's some of the best Metroid music ever. It's incredible. The way it, like, is very recognizably Metroid, but then the way it uses like vocal timbre and tone to create this really alien, different kind of sense. It's a great soundtrack when it's on, and then there's parts where it feels like there's just it's not as noticeable as I want it to be. And maybe that's kind of the game itself, is like when it's on, this game can be really phenomenal. And then there's parts that are not as notable as you want them to be. But overall, man, I'm glad, I'm much more happy to have it than not. I will say, put it that way.
Well, you know, it took a long time for it to get here. So hopefully
took a long time.
Hopefully they're going to do another one. They can make it a little bit faster.
I assume they could, because they will have all the stuff they did for this. They wouldn't have to switch development studios halfway through, all of that. All right, well, Sean, what do you want to talk about?
All right, so I'm just going to hit Digimon Story Time Stranger really fast, because I have not played enough of it to have a big take on it. I just want to reassure the people listening to this podcast. They've probably been tearing their hair out for months, being like, what the fuck? These are the people that got us to play Digimon Story. How have they not been playing Digimon Story Time Stranger? And again, I'll just point out that the game came out it came out one day after Ghost of Yotei. Which, if it had come out one day before Ghost of Yotei, there'd be people being like, how the fuck has Sean not played Ghost of Yotei yet? I was playing Digimon Story Time Stranger. But I'm about a dozen hours into Digimon Story Time Stranger. It's very good. I do miss a little bit of the vibes of the like cyberspace, like dumb detective shit from Cyber Sleuth is not in this game, because it's a different whole. It's much more like the Digimon shows where you get to the digital world and you're like in the digital world with Digimon. It's more like that, which is cool. I do kind of miss like some of that stuff from Cyber Sleuth, but it is a good time of running around, getting your Digimon. You're leveling up like a billion Digimon immediately, and it's fucking great. It's just like there's so much like digivolving and all that shit. One thing I'll shout out that I like that's new in this game, it's a small thing, but it's an amazing thing, is the Digi Ride feature, where once you end up in the digital world, you can ride on select Digimon that are in your party. And at first I was like, oh, well, great, I've got a Garurumon, who's like a big wolf guy. I'm like, I'll ride on him, which is the thing that I think everyone will think of if you watch Digimon Adventure as a kid. But then I noticed, well, there's a lot of Digimon you wouldn't think would be like rideable Digimon that you can. For instance, I think he's called Mojamon, who's like a big ball of fuzz, who's like an abominable snowman. And it's had the symbol that it's like you could Digi-ride him. I'm like, you can? And I put in my party and I hit the Digi-ride button. And how you Digi-ride him, because again, he's like a big Yeti dude, is he just fucking flexes his arm, you just sit on his bicep, and he just runs around with you sitting on his bicep, and it's fucking amazing.
I'm sold. I was already sold. I want to play this game. Personally, I'm waiting for the Switch 2 port that we kind of know is coming, but they haven't announced. But that, oh my god, that's awesome. I want to go play it right now.
I will also say, because I'm a chump, and because I also have more money to buy stuff for video games, so I have time to actually play them, I did fork out the, admittedly a lot of money, which is $20 for the song DLC. But if you're someone who has nostalgia for old Digimon shows, and you're like me and you have more disposable income than you have time to play these video games, it's going to take me like 2 months to play this game. I recommend it because it just gives you a bunch of the songs from, obviously it's the Japanese versions, like if you're sick in the mind and you want the terrible American Digimon, Digital Monsters, that's not in here. But if you want to play fucking Braveheart or Butterfly, like the all-time great Digimon songs, because the Japanese shows have amazing songs, that pack has a bunch of those, and you can basically like assign them to be like your battle theme or your boss theme, or like it'll play in the Digi Farm. And so I currently have Slash or Card Slash from Digimon Tamers, which is an amazing song, as my battle theme. And I have Braveheart from the original Digimon Adventure as my boss theme. And it livens up the game. It makes it feel more like a Persona game because they're all like lyrical songs. So as soon as the battle starts, it's like da 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 da. I'm like, yes, like rock guitar, someone singing. I'm totally into it. So again, it's very expensive, but if you desperately want to hear Card Slash while you're fighting Digimon, that's kind of the way you got to do it. That's my take on Digimon Storytime Stranger with like 12 hours in the game.
There's an old episode of this podcast, well, it's the Weekly Stuff podcast, where you made fun of me for spending the money on the theme song pack for Dragon Ball FighterZ, because I wanted to hear Head-Chala and the Dragon Ball Z Movie 1 score, and you were just mercilessly making fun of me about it. Jonathan, why would you spend money on that? You could just listen to it on your iPod while you're playing the game. Anyway, I'm glad you are happy with the music, Sean.
I think my point with that was maybe partially also that you didn't play that much of that game. it was the fighting game like this. I'm going to spend 100 hours playing this Digimon game. I want Card Slash. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Justify it for yourself all you want, you hypocrite.
All right. I will. I just did.
Okay. Thank you.
The thing I actually want to talk about before we get to Super Robot Wars, I have to talk about my Ultraman journey. Because I am on the next stage in my Ultraman journey that we have been following for years now on our podcast, which I have finished Ultraman Cosmos, which is officially the longest Ultraman show. It is a huge fucking show. It is 65 episodes, so they ended up extending it past the original 50 episode count that you usually get. So it is a very rare 5-core show because it was so popular that it just got extended. And it is also a show that has 3 movies. So it started with a movie called Ultraman Cosmos: The First Contact. Then they have Ultraman Cosmos 2: The Blue Planet, which was a sequel to the show. And then the finale for the whole Ultraman Cosmos franchise, you could call it, is Ultraman Cosmos versus Ultraman Justice: The Final Battle. So I've watched it all. I've completed my Ultraman Cosmos journey. Just for reference, this show is the one that was made. It aired from 2001 to 2002. And then those movies came out basically 2003, 2004. So it is a big chunk of the early 2000s for Ultraman. And it is a popular show for a reason, because it is very good. And it's a very interesting contrast with the previous show. So my favorite Ultraman show probably still is this show's predecessor, Ultraman Gaia, which is the one written by Chiaki J. Konaka that is like weirdly dark and very anime-esque, and I still think that one's the best. There's a Digimon connection there because that writer also wrote Digimon Tamers, which is the best Digimon show that also is kind of dark and super fucked up. And in classic Ultraman fashion, if you've got a really dark, fucked up Ultraman, the next Ultraman has got to be a lot lighter and more cheerful in tone, and that's exactly what they've done here. So Ultraman Cosmos, instead of being the kind of more grim, kind of like, apocalyptic show that Ultraman Gaia is, Ultraman Cosmos is very interesting because the premise of the show is less about we've got to fight and beat the monsters as we have to basically conserve the monsters. That it's got a very like kind of environmental conservation message where the main character Musashi is this guy who loves the monsters, and he's like, we got to treat them like they're like an endangered species almost. And so the Team Eyes is what the special human task force is in this. Their mission statement is not to kill the monsters that end up appearing, it is to like subdue them, and then they try to capture them and bring them to this like remote island where all the monsters live. But it's a cool premise for a show that just gives a very different vibe to it. Like Ultraman Cosmos's combat style is almost kind of like, I think it's inspired by Wing Chun, the Chinese martial art, where it's like much more defensive, and it's less about like I'm going to grapple and wrestle with the monster, and it's more about like some light strikes and defensive moves to try to subdue them. But then of course, as the story goes on, you run into things that are more difficult to deal with, and we can't just like subdue this. So part of the plot is that there's this alien like energy life form they call Chaos Header that can infect monsters and make them like aggressive and kind of quote unquote evil. And so they're dealing with this mysterious alien entity that can aggravate these monsters. And it's a really fascinating story about like pacifism and the difficulties in trying to, resolve things peacefully. And it's just like a cool thing for this franchise that is built on the concept of a monster shows up, Ultraman shows up, and he beats the shit out of the monster. And then in the classic shows, he like cuts their head off, or he splits them into two pieces, or like there are pretty gruesome ways that the classic 60s era Ultramans would dispose of those monsters. And here it's like if they have to end up resorting to lethal force, that's like a big narrative point that the show will deal with of like, how come we couldn't solve this a better way? There's a lot of like conflict within the team where some of them are more aggressive, and then Musashi has this very idealistic point of view that he has to deal with. And so it's a very cool show. I do think it ends up long in the tooth. Again, it got extended for an additional core, so it has 13 more episodes than it originally planned for, partially for scheduling reasons, but mostly because the show was very successful. But that does mean it does get a bit repetitive. It doesn't have as tight of a structure as a lot of the more modern Ultraman, I say modern, from my perspective, modern Ultraman shows, the ones from the late 90s and early 2000s, which are like 25 years old, not exactly modern, but you know what I mean. But Ultraman Tiga, Dyna, Gaia, those shows have really like tight, really well-drawn structures that balance the episodic and the big picture storyline. Cosmos struggles with that, but I think it's very understandable that it does because it ends up having more episodes than it expected. So I think like the story ends up kind of extending more and more and more. But it is an awesome show. The effects for the monsters, like the monster costumes, are just incredible. Like, it's mind-blowing that this show ran one episode every week without missing a week for over an entire year, and they've got new costumes every episode and all that kind of shit. Like, it just makes you look at modern TV production and just go, what the fuck are you guys doing? like look at this thing. Like, this is wild. And so, yeah, it's a really cool show. And then the movies are also awesome. It's a very cool that they started it with a movie. So Ultraman Cosmos, The First Contact, which is set when Musashi is a little kid. And so he runs into Ultraman Cosmos when he's a kid, and he kind of goes on an adventure with Cosmos. And it's almost like Ultraman meets E.T. Like, it's got a very Spielbergian vibe that, you know, it's not to say...
That's also what Digimon did. The yes. Digimon Adventure Show, the movie, which is only a 20-minute movie, but the host of the movie is the characters from Digimon Adventure as children, and it has this very Spielbergian kind of Monsters in the City adventure to it.
Yes, and I will say I do think that Digimon Adventure is a bit of an influence because the third Ultraman movie is weirdly similar, or Ultraman Cosmos movie is weirdly similar to our War Game as well, and you have two Ultramans that fuse together into a single Ultraman, which is the first time that's ever happened. I don't know if it'll happen again, but it's very similar to War Greymon and Metal Gurumon fusing into a Megamon in that film. So I think there's maybe a little bit of a Digimon influence here, because this is that era where you've got, like, Digimon is popular, Tamagotchi is popular, Pokemon is popular. I suspect that's one of the things that influenced their, let's make it about saving the monsters and not just killing all of the monsters, because everything's about, all these kids love the fucking monsters, man. It's the most popular part. Let's lean into that. So yeah, that kind of Spielbergy and almost E.T.-like movie is a really great intro. And it does have this really touching thing where that movie has this great scene where Musashi meets Ultraman Cosmos, little kid, he's like 10-year-old Musashi, and nobody believes that he's seen this like magical being, this Ultraman, and then all the kids are like, you're lying, like he's not real, and they all go into the forest where Musashi says he's there, and at first they can't see him, but then Ultraman Cosmos appears, and he flies Musashi across the city on the palm of his hand. And the end of the show it's like a real tearjerker moment, partially because the song, the ending theme for the show is just fucking all-time good. And so it does the thing where the ending theme starts playing before the credits. But the last scene in the TV show involves, like, Ultraman Cosmos has to go back to space. It's, you know, this is the Jesus thing, all these Ultraman shows in like this. And he has to, and the big point is, does the human go with him or does the human stay behind? This is one where the human stays behind. And the last conversation they have is fantastic, where Musashi starts crying, and the actor, Taiyo Sugiura, who plays Musashi, is really good in the show. And he starts, like, really emotionally breaking down because Cosmos is this guy, this, like, entity that's been with him since he's a kid. And he has this whole big speech, and he ends it with, like, I just want to go flying with you. Can we just do it one last time? And Cosmos turns and looks to him. And one cool thing about this show is this is the most characterized any Ultraman is, and it feels like a big turning point for the franchise, because I know that's a big thing later on, is that the Ultramans are much more characters rather than just fighting. And so Cosmos, who's more of a character, turns to Musashi, points to him, and says, you don't need to, Musashi, don't you get it? You can fly all on your own now. And then Cosmos flies off away. And it's like this really powerful moment where you like really realize how much Musashi has grown as a character, because you saw him be a little kid in the movie, and they show the scene in a flashback of him flying with Cosmos. That really hit me when they were playing the ending theme, and Cosmos is like, "You can fly all on your own now. You don't need me anymore, Musashi." And he goes out into space. And then, of course, the show is very successful, so they had to make 2 movies, so that it kind of gets spoiled a little bit by like, oh, next year, oh, hey, Cosmos, what have you been doing? Hey, cool, crazy. We met each other out in space, and we had to fight some aliens. The second, Ultraman Cosmos 2 is okay. Ultraman Cosmos versus Ultraman Justice is a really great movie. It's the best of the Ultraman movies I've seen so far, that they've done a few of them by this point in the series. And it's very like Digimon Adventure Hour War Game. You have this other Ultraman who's kind of like opposed to Ultraman Cosmos, but then they find common ground. But there's this big, like, kind of mysterious alien threat that's kind of like Diabolomon in that movie. But it's like a cool rumination on like hope and like believing in the future of humanity and all this stuff that's core to the themes of Ultraman. And it's just a really well done movie that even though I think the TV show has kind of a perfect ending, the movie, the third movie kind of finds like another point to kind of land it on to make you feel good. And it ends with a great moment of Musashi flying out into space with all the monsters that they had saved over the course of the show to go find another planet for them to live on, because there's not enough space for them to live on Earth. And Cosmos comes and like waves goodbye as Musashi's launching out. So it's a good movie. One thing that's hilarious, though, about the show and the movies is that all the Ultraman shows have like a little bit of an implied romance between the lead character and one of the female members of the team. And there's one here, this adorable lady who plays Ayano, who's one of the main characters. So there's sort of like will they, won't they thing between the two of them. But I feel so bad for Ayano, because all of the other ones are romances that either end up fulfilled or they tragically are unfulfilled because the main character has to go out into space with Ultraman. And that's one of the 2 ways the romance is in. Or, well, there's Return of Ultraman, the third one, where the romance gets brutally murdered and her body just dumped on the roadside. So that's another thing that can happen. Old Ultraman shows are fucking brutal. But in this one, like, they keep on doing the will they, won't they thing, and then it ultimately doesn't lead to all that much in the show. And then in both movies, they bring it back again, and they're like, oh, there's more of this will they, won't they, and both times, Musashi ends up not getting with her, and then the last movie, he flies off to go live in space with the monsters, and I'm like, what about Ayano? Why can't she go with him? Like, there's a good couple. I feel so bad for her. That's just for no reason. She never ends up hooking up with the main character, and it's very weird. At least she didn't die, because I guess the other thing that can happen is Ultraman 80, where you end up brutally dying, and then they make a robot that looks exactly like you in the end episode. It's like, look, it's a lady robot. It looks like that lady that died. And now we're not sad anymore, because you have a robot that looks just like her that could make tea for us. And you're like, that's some gender politics of 1980 for you, and then you leave it alone. So Ultraman Cosmos, great show. Ultraman continues to be a great and very weird franchise, and I'm very excited to move on to the next Ultraman, which happens to be called Ultraman Next, and Ultraman Nexus. There's a movie called Ultraman Next that leads into a show called Ultraman Nexus, and that is the new frontier I'm moving on to.
So Sean, while you were talking, I was like uncontrollably like moved by like Ultraman Cosmos. I know this show. I've never seen it, but something about this. And so I started looking through my like Google Drive to find it. And I wrote a fairly long footnote about Ultraman Cosmos in my dissertation.
Interesting.
Because, so here's what it is. You remember you translated for me, and it's in the appendices of my dissertation, this Ryuta Fujitsu interview. Uh-huh. It was specifically about Haruhi, but he talks about some other stuff from like that era of anime. And I edited and then also annotated all of the translations you did. So like if he referenced something my readers wouldn't know, I wrote footnotes on it, right? And one of them is he talks about Mobile Suit Gundam Seed. Part of its legacy was the time slot it established for anime in Japan, because Gundam Seed took over the Ultraman time slot from Cosmos. Cosmos ended on September 27th, 2002 on TBS, Japanese TBS, Tokyo Broadcasting System, and Gundam Seed took over starting the following week, October 5th. And I wrote about that, and I had to go down this whole research rabbit hole, because what's interesting is that Ultraman Cosmos had this scandal in the summer of 2002 when the star you referenced, Taiyo Sugiura, was arrested on charges of extortion and assault, and the series was pulled from the air for 5 weeks, and then it was put back on after those allegations were retracted, and Sugiura was released without being indicted. And so 5 episodes of that show never aired on TV. And it finished with episode 65, having cut some of the other ones on September 27th. But the announcement of Gundam Seed, when it would air, that was announced 1 week before Cosmos returned from its hiatus. So that decision was made during the hiatus period, and it's never been confirmed, but there's some speculation that that time slot, which was not historically an anime time slot, became an anime Gundam kind of young adult time slot because of that Ultraman controversy. And that's why I had to write this footnote to explain that, because it was kind of interesting.
Yes, yeah. Some of the Cosmos production history is very fascinating because you have that, and they were making the second movie, Ultraman Cosmos 2, The Blue Planet, was in production while the show was being made, and its production interlocked with that moment of when he was arrested. And so there is an alternate version. I don't think it was ever finished, but they were going to just do the whole movie where Musa with the kid who played Kid Musashi in the first movie, and have it be that. And I think it's why that one of the reasons why that movie is not that good, because it kind of feels like a very generic Ultraman movie that like doesn't really feel like a Cosmos movie. And I think it's partially because it was made while the show was in production by some people who are not the people on the show, but also because they were like, we have to make this generic enough that we could put the kid in here instead of the shit we already filmed with the adult actor, in case that ended up being more than it ended up being.
Yeah, so anyway, that's why I know about Ultraman Cosmos. That's the rare Ultraman show I know some weird little background details of.
Yes. But yeah, and I'm getting it's very interesting that I'm getting very close to, I think, a big shift in this franchise. I think we got 1 or 2 shows before we enter what it's like the actual modern era of Ultraman, where I know that that like just stylistically is going to change a lot, and I'm very curious what that's going to be like, because I think I'm getting close. I'm getting very close to the end of like we're gonna have 50 episodes kind of thing, and we're going to go into the 2-core mode soon. So it's a fascinating franchise. It's just like it's changed so much. I'm very curious to see how it changes from here.
All right, well, you'll keep us updated. Sean, I'm going to go ahead and cut. I was going to talk here about Kirby Air Riders, and I think I'm going to defer that for now, because our next episode will probably be our top 10 games of 2025 episode, and I am going to have a lot to say about Kirby Air Riders on that episode. I will just say I fucking adore this game. This is one of the most auteurist video games I've ever played in the AAA space. It is the most Masahiro Sakurai thing Masahiro Sakurai has ever done. It is wild that this game exists. It is a weird little indie game in the body of a big expensive Nintendo $70 release. It is one of the weirdest things any big publisher has put out in my time covering video games, and I love it absolutely to death. I've put in over 30 hours into this game so far. I had to tear myself away from it to play Metroid Prime 4, and even then, I would have finished Metroid Prime 4 faster if I didn't keep going back and playing more Kirby Air Riders. And I have a whole set of notes on it, and I'm just going to save that because I want you to have time to talk about Super Robot Wars, because I know you've been building to this, and I want you to have time for that, and then time for us to do the monthly 10.
All right, so yeah, I just put into our notes Sean's Super Robot Wars Adventures, that I made a layered section of notes to kind of hit some of the things I wanted to talk about. So listeners of the podcast for the last 2 stuff episodes will know I've been playing Super Robot Wars Y, and you'll know I've been playing it for a very long time. Because kind of like what you're saying with Kirby Air Riders, partway through me playing Super Robot Wars Y, Ghost of Yotei came out, so I played all Ghost of Yotei, and then I came back to Super Robot Wars Y, and then played like 50 more hours of Super Robot Wars Y, because it is a big game, and I've kind of done everything in it. And I reached a point when I was playing it where I was like, I'm loving this game, but I feel I need to wrap it up because I want to play Digimon Story Time Stranger. I should be moving on to other stuff, but I couldn't put it down. And I've spent so much time playing Super Robot Wars Y that the first DLC release for the game came out while I was still fucking playing it. And I wasn't originally planning on buying it, but I saw the Big O was in it, and my Toonami ass brain was like, well, if the Big O is going to be in the DLC, I mean, I can't not get the Big O DLC. So for people who don't know, Big O is a 1999 to 2002 two-season anime. It has a very interesting history because it was not particularly popular in the West. It was huge over here in the Toonami block, and so the second season of the show was made in conjunction with Cartoon Network, basically. But the Big O, it's a fucking great show. I had not actually watched any of it in Japanese ever by the time I bought this DLC, but I remember really liking it as a kid because it's honestly...
The Big O is also a Chiaki Konaka show.
Yes.
The Digimon... That's amazing. Wow.
I will say, Jonathan, that part of this rabbit hole I went down is I did go through the level of research to put together, if we did a season of Japanimation Station that was a Chiaki S. Konaka joint, or what
J. Konaka.
J. Konaka, yes. What would that be? And it would be a wild season. Who knows if we will do it or when we would do it, but we might do it someday because that dude had a fucking nuts career.
Yeah.
But he also wrote the Big O. And it's interesting because it's much more of a like kaiju show, honestly, than a mecha show. Because the Big O is big and he fights a lot of kaiju and other robots, but it's like a kind of like crazy film noir style thing. It's very influenced by Batman the Animated Series aesthetically in terms of tone as well, which is part of, I think, why it landed really well over here. And the first season of the Big O, I guess I'll say, so I bought the DLC. I was playing the DLC. I love the Big O so much. I'm like, I'll also buy the Blu-rays for the Big O. And so I watched all the season 1 of the Big O in Japanese. I'm a little bit into season 2, but season 2 gets very rough because Big O is one of the most immaculately produced TV anime you will ever see. And it was made in 1999 when we were still do everything on proper old school cell animation. And the second season is in 2002, where we weren't doing that anymore. And so it is it's like when we watched that Lupin the Third OVA, that was the first one that was like the digital animation style, and you're like, oh my god, it's just a rough transition. And the storyboards are still great, the writing and acting is still great, but just the visual presentation is just so degraded compared to the original season. The original season, it's as good a season of anime as you will watch. And it's just so cool. The Big O is just an all-time great mecha design. He's got these big fucked up arms that have a giant pile driver in it, so he just punches shit, and this big fucking just like metal rod shoots out and then shoots back in and blows up whatever he punched. It's fucking great. And there's a cool robot girl named Dorothy, and she's very funny. So anyways, I bought the DLC, I was playing the DLC, and it's a huge DLC. It's like probably 12 hours worth of content. Like, there's a lot of stuff. So I played all of the DLC. And in the process of playing the DLC, I also encountered some other stuff that, like, it's the best thing about this game, about Super Robot Wars, is just running into all these other franchises and things that you don't know anything about and encountering them and being like, these are amazing. So the DLC has the Big O. It also has Galaxy Cyclone Bryger, which is a thing I had never heard about, and it's so fucking cool. Like, all the characters are great. It's got this, it's very Lupin the Third in terms of aesthetic. It's like a team of like ragtag individuals where you've got like this sexy lady spy, you've got this like hotshot kid who's good with a revolver. You've got this like sort of like hot rod mechanic guy, and then their leader Isaac, who is the kind of like brains of the operation. And they're these kind of like, you know, trouble solvers. You know, they're problem solvers. Like, people come to them with problems and they solve them, and those problems always involve big robots somehow. So they've got Bryger, who's a super robot. The theme song is for Galaxy Cyclone Bryger is an all-time great one. It opens with this like narration of a guy. He's saying it in Japanese, but it's like he's saying shit like, when you've got a problem, when you've got nowhere to go, when you're on the run, there's one people you can turn to, J9. And while they're saying that, you have in the background this like dun 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 Bryger playing. It's so good. It's an amazing theme song. And when you're playing the game, if you load it on your flash drive, you can have that play when you fight with Bryger. It's amazing. But then there's a third thing that's in it that I didn't know was in it, because there's an anime called Futo PI. And I just saw that name, and I was like, oh, I feel like I've seen that name on Crunchyroll or something. And I was playing the game, and imagine my surprise when I'm like, oh, there's something called Futo PI. I have no idea what it is. And then at some point in the DLC, in the story, a fucking Kamen Rider shows up. And I'm like, what? I thought this was the giant robot game. Why is there a Kamen Rider dude who's here and he's just fighting? He's just a man-sized dude who's jumping around fighting big robots. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I went down this whole rabbit hole where I had to find out that it's Futo PI. Technically, what's in the game is Futo PI, The Portrait of Kamen Rider Skull, which is a movie sequel to an animated series called Futo PI, which is an adaptation of a manga called Futo PI, which is a sequel to the live-action 2009 TV series Kamen Rider W. Which is, I now understand, is generally speaking regarded as the best Kamen Rider show, at least in terms of the modern Kamen Rider shows. And it's wild. It's like Kamen Rider, but he's a detective, but also he's got a guy named Philip who's called Philip because he's named after Philip Marlowe, and he's this boy with this mysterious power where he has access to all the knowledge in the world, but in order to actually, like, know that knowledge, he needs to narrow down and kind of, like, symbolically read it in his mind. And so it's about a detective going around and investigating a case, getting key words that he can tell to Philip, so Philip can go to the infinite library in his brain and like investigate and get the data they need to actually solve the case. But also they're a superhero who they're both, that Philip's consciousness goes into the main character's body when he transforms, and they're Kamen Rider W because there's two of them, it's double, and they're split vertically down the middle, and one half of them is one color, the other half is the other color, because they've also got little things called Gaia memories that they plug into their belt, and when they plug those in, they get superpowers, but they can have two, so they can have like heat and metal powers, and it's like you're playing fucking Kirby 64, and one half of them turns silver metal, the other half turns red for heat, and they've got like metal heat powers, or they can have like wind powers and heat power. It's like 7 different premises for a TV show in one TV show that they made a manga sequel of, that they made an anime out of, and then they put those motherfuckers, who, to be clear, they're just the characters from the live-action TV show in animated form, and they put those in their game where they fight giant robots. And it sounds like a thing that shouldn't work, but it's fucking great. Those characters are awesome. Kamen Rider Skull, who is like the mentor of the main detective dude who died tragically in the first episode of the show, in what they call Begins Night, which is the night that they began because it became Kamen Rider W. They keep on saying the English words Begins Night, which is very funny. But there's an alternate reality where that guy lived, and that's where he's Kamen Rider Skull, and he comes into the reality of our world, and he's teaming up with us to fight the alien robots in the game, obviously not in the TV show. And I like those characters so much that now I'm fucking watching Kamen Rider W also, because the show is really cool. And I like the characters. I'm like, I'll check out this show. And I'm like 10 episodes in, and it's really good. I'm like, well, fuck, eventually I'll watch the show, then I'll have to watch the fucking anime and the movie too. Meanwhile, at this point, in the timeline of events, I haven't even finished Super Robot Wars Y yet, because now I'm fucking watching the Big O and Kamen Rider W. Then I go back, I finish the DLC. The DLC is great. Also in the DLC, you get a bunch of characters that are for like the original designed characters from the past couple of Super Robot Wars games, which is going to come up later. So just keep that in mind. Then I go and finish regular Super Robot Wars Y, and it's a fucking great game. Like, you have to be an insane person to play this video game, clearly. And I already thought I was an insane person, but I hadn't yet gone off the deep end. But over the course of playing the game, you will go off the deep end. It's so much fun. The back half of the game has, or like really the last third of the game has all this great shit, where that's where all the Godzilla stuff in the game comes in, because if you don't remember, this has Godzilla Singular Point, the anime, is one of the adapted series, and so there's a whole big part where all the different enemy factions are all like, it's fucking coming, dude, like the God of Calamity, like the shit's gonna get real, and then eventually Godzilla shows up, and you have to fucking fight Godzilla, and you've got like Camille fucking doing the thing from the end of Zeta Gundam where he rams the Wave Rider Zeta into the O and kills Pathinus, but you're doing it to like Godzilla's face because Godzilla's giant, and it's really great. And you've got fucking like Amuro, and they have all like original voiced dialogue lines, so you have all the original actors saying shit, and they're like, you have a moment where if you use Hiro Yui in the Wing Gundam Zero to use his ultimate move, which is the thing where he blows up the bunker at the end of Endless Waltz by shooting like 1,000 giant beams from space on it, you can do that on Godzilla. And so you can hear Midori Hikaru, the voice actor of Hiro Yui, say as Hiro Yui, acquiring target, Godzilla. And then he shoots big lasers at Godzilla's head. It's really good. The story of the game honestly like ends up being really fantastic. I love all the original characters. Your playable character Forte, or there's two playable characters. I picked the female one, and it's that kind of setup where both the male and female options exist in the world as characters and they coexist in the story. But I think Forte is just a great character. They really dig into her past and what makes her tick. Her relationship with Echika, who's the kind of captain of the ship in the game, who's this young girl with kind of magical powers that ends up connected to the main story. And Forte is a sort of like adoptive big sister to her. It's just the character relationships are really well done. I love all of the crazy, getting Amuro Ray and Hiro Yui and fucking Lelouch and all these characters together and wrapped up in this story. It's just so much fun. It's a fantastic game. And there's a bunch of cool shit where there's a bunch of original stuff in the game they do that's really fun. Like, for instance, you have the show Dynazenon, which is a great show. Another show that I watched in its entirety because of the characters in this game. I've watched a lot of anime because of this game and some live action TV, it turns out. And the bad guys in Dynazenon are fantastic in that show because they're very not Power Rangers. They're very like Team Rocket from Pokemon-esque, where they're like, yeah, are they technically the bad guys? Sure. But are they like the most fun characters in the show and they're like goofballs and you just want to hang out with them? Absolutely. And they give them in the game, an originally designed mech that's like an alternate version of the Dynazenon that's color schemed for them. And so if you fulfill some kind of secret objectives, you can get this and you get them on your team. And they've got all these cool like original moves and voiced dialogue lines with all the voice actors doing all these big attacks. And it's called the Dynazenon Relive, and it's awesome. And it's like there's just so much rich stuff in this game. And I loved it so much. And I also was exposed to the main characters of the past two Super Robot Wars games because they're in the DLC of the like original protagonist characters for those games. And so I started going down this big rabbit hole of being like, well, this game was so much fun. And they've been making fucking Super Robot Wars games since like 1990 on the Game Boy Color. There's a lot of these Super Robot Wars games, and I just went down this rabbit hole where I grabbed my jailbroken new Nintendo 2DS XL and my jailbroken PS Vita, and I was like, how many Super Robot Wars games can I get on these two devices? Turns out there's a lot, like there's a shit ton. I mean, they made more than one Super Robot Wars game on the fucking Wonder Swan. Like, there's a lot of these games they made. And I just got as many of them as I could, including they made the past couple of them, the ones whose characters are in the DLC for Y, are on the PS Vita. They're like PS4/Vita games, and so I got the Vita versions of those. And I messed around with those a little bit, but I kind of just went through this phase of like, I was like, what is this fucking franchise? It's so insane. It's changed it's got just like encompasses everything in the world of anime at some point, including things that aren't anime like fucking Kamen Rider. Like, I just don't understand what this thing is anymore. And I ended up Googling what do people consider the best Super Robot Wars game, particularly in Japan. And the thing that came up almost universally was Super Robot Wars Alpha, which is the game from 2000, which is on the original PlayStation. And I saw that, I was like, well, rather than just sort of like the thing I had been doing, which is I was just dipping into all these random games. I'm like, I'll play one of the 3DS ones. I just want to play the first mission. And like the thing you do when you have a bunch of emulated video games and you just sort of like are tasting them, I just want to like touch it. I just want to feel it. What is this thing? But I wanted to actually play one. And so I started playing Super Robot Wars Alpha, and I'm on mission 29 of like 60 something of it now. I probably played maybe like 18 to 20 hours of Super Robot Wars Alpha. And it's like so good. This game is amazing. The vibes on this game are off the fucking charts. Because it's wild to go from Y to this game, because you have to put into context like end of Evangelion, because there's a lot of Neon Genesis Evangelion shit in this game. That movie was only like 2 years old when this fucking game came out. This is before, like, there's no Gundam Seed characters in this game because Gundam Seed hadn't come out yet. And so it's like going from a thing where Gundam Seed has been around for 4 years practically and Y to a game so old that Gundam Seed wasn't even an option for them is like, it's wild, because you just see how much the perspective and the relationship of some of these franchises has changed over the years. Because there's so many of these characters are in Alpha that were also in Y, like Camille, like Char/Quattro Bugina, because there's a lot more Zeta in here, so he's Quattro, at least as far as I've gotten to the story. Amuro's in it. There's a shit ton of Gundam stuff. And it's like really cool to see something that is like it's taking the Zeta Gundam as like the base point, but then it's pulling in all these things like Gundam Wing. But Gundam Wing, it's just like so fresh from the game's perspective. It's not like, oh, we're doing this like old school Gundam thing like in Y. It's like, no, we're taking Gundam Wing like very seriously because it's one of the new Gundam shows relative to the game's development. And so there's something very fun about that. But it's also just what I love about it is the game has this, like, from our perspective, very retro vibe that's very 90s. And it's got, great MIDI-fied versions of the theme songs for all these shows and the soundtracks from these shows. You have the, like, wonderfully compressed, terrible audio lines for the voice recordings because there's so much voice acting in this game. But it's all just in the like action, like the combat scenes, but they have so many characters that even if each character only does like 5 to 6 lines of dialogue, there's still hundreds and hundreds of lines of dialogue, which is more than like a PlayStation game can handle reasonably on like one CD. So the audio is like hyper compressed. And then you have all these like great like pixel art graphics because it's all sprites. They're not using 3D graphics, even though it's the PlayStation. You have these great like pixel art portraits of Camille and stuff in the visual novel story sections. And there's just something so wonderful about the vibes of it from that era. And its relationship to things like Gunbuster is in the game, and that's very fun. And Eva and all this kind of stuff. Like it's got so much. And because it's all pixel art, they can fit so many more characters than is like reasonable in it. Like it is frankly unreasonable the number of like playable units and characters that are available in the game because they just get everybody. And there's all this stuff of like that you can't do in Y because there's really no reason to do it. But in this game, they're like, fuck it. If you want to separate the Combattler V into the 5 little like cars that it turns into, I mean, you can do that. I don't know why you would. They're all going to die immediately. But you can, if you want to say Combattler V, like Uncombined or whatever the fuck they say, it's like, you can do that shit. And so it feels almost more like a simulation game than the more modern ones because it's so abstracted and it's so lo-fi, it's able to do a lot of things. And this is true of a lot of old video games. It's just able to do things and represent them in its lo-fi abstract form that a game that has much higher fidelity and much higher levels of standards for that fidelity can't do and can't really do with its budget. And there's something very fun about that where it's a very imaginative experience playing the game because so much is abstracted. But the big thing with Alpha is the story is great, and the way they use the characters is fucking so much fun. And part of it is, well, the game really lit up for me when they started getting into the Neon Genesis Evangelion stuff, because trying to fit Eva and the characters of Eva into a world that has literally anything outside of Eva in it is hilarious and ridiculous, and it just leads to so many fucking incredible moments. For example, they do, there's that one early episode of Eva, I think it's like episode 3 or 4, where Shinji has defeated the first angel, and then he's going to the high school, and all the people in high school kind of know that he's the pilot, this new kid that's transferred is the pilot, and then Toji, who becomes one of his friends, he beats the crap out of Shinji because his little sister got hurt in the whole wreckage. And then later in the episode, he and the other guy who's like the military otaku that becomes Shinji's friend both go and watch the next angel fight and realize that, oh, this is like not joking around. Like this is deadly serious. And Shinji, to protect them, ends up having to put them in the plug of the Eva. Well, they do that episode, but they make a couple of really fun changes to it. So it starts out with a conversation between Ritsuko and Misato at NERV headquarters where they're talking about Shinji. And they have the whole thing about like the hedgehog dilemma and all that dialogue from Eva. And then at some point they're like, but there's this mysterious new transfer student at Shinji's school. It's like, what? Like, and we don't know where he came from. And we've been trying to use Kaji has been trying to find out where this guy's from, who this kid from. We can't find out. He must be some sort of spy. Well, what's his name? It's Hiro Yui.
I was going to say Hiro Yui. I knew it was Hiro Yui.
And they cut to the school, and they basically do all the stuff that Hiro does in early Gundam Wing, where he infiltrates Relina's school, and he's hacking into the computers and stuff. But here it's him trying to find out what NERV's whole deal with, because in the setting of this game, NERV is like this secret, super secret organization deeply embedded within the Earth Federation government from the like Universal Century Gundam setting. And Hiro, as a member sent for the colonies to fuck up the Earth Federation shit, he's trying to like find out what they're about. So because there's two transfer students, they don't know who is the one that's the pilot of the Eva. So when Toji's trying to figure out who it is, he's like, I want to beat the shit out of the kid who's I'm going to blame for my sister getting hurt. He runs into Hiro, and he tries to start shit with Hiro, and Hiro just kicks his ass and just walks away. And it's so funny. Again, it's all just visual novels, but the writing is so good, the scenarios are so good that I can just see it in my mind's eye of Hiro just like judo throwing this fucking asshole on the ground and just walking off. There's a scene where Hiro's hacking into the computers at the Nair school, and fucking Ayanami walks in, and there's just an amazing moment where Hiro turns, and she's looking at him, and you just get, in the visual novel thing, you just get like 15 text boxes back and forth of Ayanami, ... Hiro, ... Ayanami, ... And it just, you keep on hitting the button until eventually Hiro just thinks, what the hell is up with this girl? And it fades to black. And it's great. Then Relina comes to the school looking for Hiro, and she gets wrapped up in the whole thing with the angel attack, and so she ends up with Toji and the other kid in Shinji's fucking Eva, and so she's there, and you get Ikari Shinji from Eva meeting a human being that has empathy, which is a thing that has never happened in the history of the TV show of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's like Relina, who is your like pacifist idealist person, and like she's so nice to Shinji. It's very heartwarming to see Shinji get some uplifting shit. But then at the end of that mission, I don't know if this dialogue happens if you just beat the angel with the Eva, but I beat the angel by using Combattler V's electromagnetic spin attack. And so you can come in with your super robots. And if you don't know Eva, in the lore of that show, the bad guys, the monsters, the angels have this thing called an AT field. And the reason why you need the Evangelion is that they're the only thing they've made that can penetrate the AT field and actually hurt them. Well, in the lore of Super Robot Wars Alpha, any attack that does more than 4,000 damage or something goes past the AT field. And really the only machines you get that can do that are the super robots. So like Mazinger Z, Getter Robo, Combattler V, Writing, those kinds of ones. And so I go in and I go fight the angel, and I just use all the abilities to soup up this one attack and just demolish this thing in one big attack where Hyoma, the main character in Combat V, is just like, Cho Denji Spin! And if you don't know what that is, it's literally just the Combattler V spinning in a circle really fast and then launching it straight through whatever it is. He's not like, it's not a regular attack. It's like what Goku does to fucking Piccolo when he's a kid. He just like bursts through the middle of him. And so the Combattler V just spins really fast and bursts through the angel, blows it up. And then you get this fantastic scene where Shinji goes back to Nerva HQ. He walks up to Misato and he's like, what the fuck? The only reason I have been riding these fucking Evas and going through all this shit is you people have told me that the only way to kill these things is I use these Evas, and I'm like ruining my life doing this shit, and then some asshole walks up with a big robot, goes, Cho Denji Spin, and just kills it in one hit. Like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And it's so funny. It's so funny to see Shinji live in like a real world with actual people in it, and with like empathy and all this shit, and like not like, you know, the like really harshly designed rules of the setting of Eva that kind of pigeonhole him and put him in a little corner in such an unreasonable way. And he lives in like a much more open world where there are all kinds of dreams and possibilities can become a reality. And there's not just one path he's forced to walk. And Shinji's just like, what the fuck is going on? This is such horse shit. But because the people on the ship, the Argama and everyone are very nice, he joins forces with you. There's so much just incredible stuff like that in this game. Like it's just top to bottom, the scenarios, the writing. It's like it is both incredibly funny, but also does a really great job of like having some very touching stories. They combine the settings of like all these Gundam shows where they like have Paptimus, the bad guys from Gundam F91, and the bad guys from Victory Gundam are all one faction, which is just the faction that's the weird fuckers from Jupiter. And it's just one group that they're all together, because all of those people are just weird fuckers from Jupiter, but now they're all one faction. And that's like a really interesting way to handle those characters. It's very funny that everybody and their uncle is making some new Gundam, because It's like you have the Zeta Gundams being made, the Double Zetas being made, the Alex from 0080, the ones from 0083, Stardust Memory is all over this game. So you have like Nina Purpleton and all that stuff out of Elgato, the Victory Gundam, the Gundam F91, the 5 Gundams from the Colony. And so it's like you just keep on cards like, where are all these fucking new Gundams? Everybody's building a crazy new Gundam. It's very good. So I've just been having a blast playing this fucking ancient game from 25 years ago at this point, but it is incredibly good. And I don't know where this will take me with this franchise. I don't know if I like what game I'll play next, or if I'll continue, or I'll take a break from Super Robot Wars. But I know there's a fan patch for this game, so if you're interested, you can find it that way. If you can read Japanese, I'm just playing the Japanese version. It's obviously very easy to emulate because it's just a regular PlayStation 1 game, but it's so good. It's just so fucking good.
Man, I love this segment. It also scared me a little bit about picking up Super Robot Wars Y for myself, because what will I become? You know, it's good to be reminded, Sean, that it's not just me who gets into weird obsessive projects on this show. You know, you do it too.
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, it's been a while since I had one like this. Other than like Ultraman, I feel like is a very successful experiment for me where I've done it in a very gradual way over very many years. That I'm not just like marathoning every Ultraman show, and I've just been like doing a bit by bit, and I've been watching Ultraman forever at this point. But yeah, every once in a while I run into a thing like this, and it's just like it's all consuming. It's just because there's just something about the mixture of all of these crazy shows. Some of them that are like some of my favorite media properties and characters and stories and themes I've ever encountered in my life, like Gundam and Zeta Gundam and stuff like that. And then some of it, that shit I've just never seen of and never even heard about before. And all of a sudden you fall in love with it, and I'm watching a fucking Kamen Rider show, It's like I was not planning on just randomly watching the Kamen Rider W. I didn't even know he was in the fucking DLC I bought. And all of a sudden I'm 10 episodes into that show. And I think one of the crazy things is that there's a bunch of stuff that I like love the characters and all the stuff in the game. Like there's a show called Majestic Prince that all those characters are in Super Robot Wars Y. And I love those characters. I thought like their story and all that stuff was super fun in the game. And then I looked up the reviews for the show, and the show is just awful reviews. But I really want to watch the show. And I suspect that probably I'm willing to bet the Super Robot Wars Y is probably actually a better representation of those characters and their story that the show managed. But like it's just you so fall in love with all these weird goofballs and from all these weird corners that live in worlds that are so disconnected, but somehow they've been thrown into this big mixer that you just can't help but fall in love and want to go see where did they come from? Like what is the larger story involving all these people? I think probably the number one on my list of something I'm not currently watching is I want to watch Galaxy Cyclone Briger. Those guys are so good. After they do something cool, they all give each other the thumbs up and just go, yay! And when they do that in the game, I'm like, that seems fun. I want to pal around with these idiots. This seems like a good time.
Well, this is awesome, and please keep us updated if you keep playing Super Robot Wars madness, because I'm enjoying this. This is one of my favorite recent segments we've done.
Yes. It has been so all-consuming of my life for like 3 months at this point. I've been doing so much Super Robot Wars.
All right. Well, you want to move on to the monthly 10?
All right, Jonathan. Yes, I think it's that time of the year. It's the time for cheer. It's the time for the monthly 10. What have you got for us?
Well, Sean, you challenged me for this month, and your challenge was, what I wrote down was the top 10 ways that Christmas traditions and mythology should be updated to match our new modern world. You asked me, who is Frosty in the 2020s? Who is our Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? What do we do now for Christmas?
Yes.
Is that an accurate summation?
Yeah, it's a question that's been, in the back of my mind for a while now. And, I think looking over the news section for the day, it becomes clear about why I think it's just appropriate for us to reassess Christmas as a holiday, because I think the world has just changed a lot from when the version of Christmas we currently celebrate was kind of created in the early 20th century. We gotta fucking update it, guys. It's just time.
All right, Sean, I took all this into account. I think I went in ways you will expect, and I went in ways you absolutely fucking will not expect. And I think you're going to like this.
I'm very, very excited for this.
All right. Number 10. I'm going to do no preamble. I'm just going to go in. Number 10. More Christmas animal characters. For many decades, we had Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. In the 90s, we got Olive the Other Reindeer. In the 21st century, we haven't gotten any Christmas animals.
Sure.
There's Mr. Narwhal in Elf with Will Ferrell, but he's only in that one scene. I want more Mr. Narwhal. I want more Christmas creatures who are in Christmas storybooks that then get adapted into half-hour TV specials, all right?
Okay.
I want Parker the Christmas Platypus, Horatio the White-Tailed Musk Ox, Reginald the Nunavutian Rock Ptarmigan. I don't know really how to say that. Rock Ptarmigan. Yeah, Nunavutian because they're from Nunavut is where they live. Rowan the Steel-Toed Mountain Goat. There are so many options, so many animals who can discover the true meaning of Christmas. That's just a couple of them. Sean, do you think I should write my own children's book based on one of those?
Well, I think the thing is, Jonathan, I think you've got a good enough idea there. You don't have to write your own children's book. You can just put that into ChatGPT and it'll write a children's book for you. So, I mean, all you really need is a good idea and a prompt, and you can change the world, buddy. So have at it.
I think Rowan the Steel-Toed Mountain Goat, I can see a Christmas story about him. I think that's good. He's so sure-footed on the mountain that he can make it over a pass that Santa can't.
Yes.
And help in the same way Rudolph did, right? Like, yeah.
Exactly.
He's very sure-footed. All right. Number 9, totally different direction. I am proposing under the assumption of this top 10 list, Sean, I'm the king of Christmas. I just get to make these changes, right?
Yes.
Okay. I propose and enact a 100-year moratorium on all extant secular Christmas music. All right? Traditional Christmas songs, aka hymns, carols, the actual religious stuff, that can stay, because it would obviously be unethical and unconstitutional of me to just bar songs of worship, and a lot of them are pretty good. But Deck the Halls, Let It Snow, Baby It's Cold Outside, that fucking Paul McCartney Wonderful Christmas Time song, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, all gone. Outlawed, kaput for the rest of our natural lifetimes. We never have to hear them again. And the good go out with the bad. They're all fucking gone. Is a Christmas song you like? It's gone. Think of a Christmas song you hate? Also gone. Better world. This is not because of any strong religious convictions on my part or a feeling that there is something immoral about secular Christmas music. I just think most of it fucking sucks. I've heard enough of it. And when I go over to my mom's house, I want to hear anything other than James Taylor's goddamn Christmas album again. Bob Dylan's Christmas album gets to stay because it is mostly hymns.
Okay, very good. I mean, I will 100% second this. The principal of our school has started doing a thing this year, the new principal for our school, where he'll play some songs during passing period on Fridays as like a little thing. I don't even know who decides the playlist. For the past 3 weeks, though, it's been Christmas songs, and I just can't.
Yeah, fuck them.
I can't countenance it. It makes me feel like I have to go pick up fucking eggs from the grocery store when I'm hearing it, because it's like the only place I hear this shit is when I'm shopping, and I hate it.
My problem with secular Christmas music is it's about nothing. Whether you are Christian or not, religious Christmas music is at least about something. It references something. It's like the birth of Christ, the love of God, something real. But Deck the Halls, Winter Wonderland, it's just about the vague feeling of being alive at Christmas. And some of them are good, but some of them are just the most inane fucking bullshit. And I'm 33. I've heard enough of it. I've done this enough times. Banned. All gone.
I agree. I not only will I back this, I will violently enforce it for you.
All right, thank you, Sean. Number 8. The invention of a microchip that we put inside the head of anybody who bitches and moans about hearing Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. And what the microchip does is it automatically converts the phrase Happy Holidays in their brain to Merry Christmas, so they never have to hear Happy Holidays again. But in tandem, there's also a microchip that the rest of us get that automatically renders those people invisible and silent at all times in all scenarios if we so choose, and erases them from our point of view.
That's a good. It's a little bit nicer than what I thought you were going to say, which is that they put a microchip in their head and then we make it blow up if they start complaining about it. It's I think, yeah, this is we just don't have to deal with it. If you have some sort of weird issue about people saying Happy Holidays for whatever Fox News related reasons that you would believe that, you can just go fuck off, and nobody should ever have to deal with your ass.
Yeah, mine is definitely less violent. I'm also okay with the just blow them up thing, but I was proposing a more. This is a compromise, I think.
Yes, yours has a little bit more of Christmas spirit to it than mine does.
Yes, yeah. All right, number 7. I want another Pokemon Christmas Bash album. It has been 24 years since the original, which means there are people who have been born, raised, and possibly even had kids of their own who like Pokemon who have no idea this disaster piece exists. If you don't know what Pokemon Christmas Bash is, please go listen to episode 269 of the Weekly Stuff podcast from Christmas 2018, 7 fucking years ago now, Jesus Christ. Or more accurately, I sprung that on Sean. We didn't review the album. I surprised Sean with an album he didn't know existed. Sean, do you want to describe Pokemon Christmas Bash for us?
It was bad.
Okay, I meant more. Okay, but here's the thing. So the original album was this totally bizarre original Christmas song soundtrack that involved the Pokemon characters, but it couldn't actually be about Christmas in any meaningful way, so it's totally bizarre. There's this whole through line about how Ash and Misty are fucking in that album. It's really weird. I want more of that, to be clear. But I also
Jonathan,
want a proper...
If you want more of Ash and Misty fucking, I've got an entire internet out there for you, okay?
Yeah. In this song, okay, I know what you mean. But I also want a part of the album that is like traditional Christmas songs where like Team Rocket sings "Oh Come All Ye Faithful," stuff like that. Because we didn't get that on Pokemon Christmas Bash, and it made me sad because that sounds funny. You know, the second generation English cast of Pokemon never got to do a Pokemon Christmas album. The Japanese cast hasn't done one at all. I want Matsumoto Rika doing in-character covers of English Christmas songs as Satoshi. I want Japanese Meowth doing a duet with English Meowth on Silent Night or something. You know, Silent Nyarth. There we go. I'm just pitching out ideas here. I want more Pokemon Christmas Bash. And this can break my no secular Christmas song law. This can be an exception.
I mean, you know, it's not Christmas music, it's Pokemon music.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Do you co-sign this?
As long as I don't have to do a podcast about it, sure.
No, well, of course you'd have to do a podcast.
Oh, well then maybe this is one I fight you on.
All right.
And
my number 6,
in a Pokemon battle.
My number 6 and my number 5 are both new laws that we will have in the United States of America. All right?
Okay.
So here's the first one. Number 6. The American people now get to vote once per year on one living person we get to do a Christmas carol on. That person can be American or foreign, doesn't matter. SEAL Team 6 will go and get them for us if it is what the American people decide. We will put boots on the ground in Moscow to drag Putin out of the Kremlin if that is what the American people decide. But once that person is chosen by a majority vote, they will be put through a Christmas Carol style scenario where the weight of their sins and personal emptiness will be displayed before them in a past, present, future framework. The National Defense Production Act will be invoked to commission leading Hollywood filmmakers and VFX artists alongside tech industrialists in Silicon Valley to create eerily realistic virtual reality scenarios to fuck with this person's brain. They will be strongly encouraged to repent their wicked ways, and if they don't, well, at least we all have spent the holiday season bullying a bad person and making them realize how much we fucking hate them, and that is what Christmas is all about.
I absolutely love this idea. I think this is fantastic. It also just sounds like the premise for like if the Purge franchise wanted to do a Christmas Carol movie. This is what it would be. It's like once a year we all got to vote, all got to put it in, and it's like it fucking turns out it's Dave down the street. It's that fucking asshole. And it's like we got to fucking deal with his bullshit.
I mean, obviously, I'm nominating Elon Musk for the first of these. But we can go from there. Just people we need to bully and destroy. Yes.
Oh my God. He's definitely near the top of the list for sure.
Yeah. All right. Number 5. This is a related law, but this one is to keep the American people humble. And to keep them humble, we will elect once a year somebody to serve in the role of Grinch. This person will have to don the same...
I'll volunteer for the first one. Just.
I thought you would be a good choice. This person, so Sean, it could be you, will have to don the same makeup that Jim Carrey wore in the 2000 movie by Ron Howard, and you're going to have to keep it on for the entirety of December. But in your role as Grinch, you will be allowed to select one American city of any size with whose help the federal government will assist in stealing all the presents from every man, woman, and child within city limits. The same city cannot be chosen twice within a 10-year period, and the city will not be made aware of this beforehand. They will wake up on Christmas morning and simply find their presents missing. However, unlike in the actual Dr. Seuss story, this Grinch's heart will not grow 3 sizes. Instead, all of the presents will be taken and shipped to whichever part of the world we are currently actively destroying or funding the destruction of. Pick your poison, there's a lot. And we will be distributing all the gifts to the civilian population there. This will be enacted through an act of Congress called the Grinch Act, the Getting Really Into Noble Collective Humility Act.
I'm glad that you came up with an appropriate acronym there. I'm glad that you specified that my heart wouldn't grow 3 sizes because I would die. My heart would cease functioning. I would be too heavy for it to be able to actually operate effectively. Which was the sad thing that happens after. That's the post-credit scene of the Grinch. The Grinch just sort of starts coughing up blood and just collapses and dies under the weight of his own heart. I do that's like in my head though. It's like fucking the mission from the new Modern Warfare where they have to like clear the house and you're like with Captain Price and you're like going through all that shit. And it's that, but it's like you're going and getting the presents. Like it's go time. Let's go. And then fucking like crowbar open the door and go and you're just like, sit down. Just like get all the fucking presents, get out there. We have to fucking like exfil with a helicopter. It'd be pretty good.
I think, honestly, I think this would make America a better country if we did this.
If America tried to help people, I think it would, yeah. If we, at the cost of our own luxury and wealth, absolutely, it would make America a better place.
And it gets to be festive. Somebody gets to dress up as the Grinch. It's fun, right? People could campaign to be Grinch. It'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we get to, celebrate a modern American classic like the Jim Carrey How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
All right. Number 4. Since we're living in a time of endless IP brand management recycling, I think we need to at least get more Christmas bullshit out of it. So once a year, every major film and TV studio must choose one of their most popular franchises and produce a Christmas special based on it, preferably a Christmas Carol where applicable, so we can finally get the Star Wars Christmas Carol that retells Luke's redemption of Vader but through the Charles Dickens story. We can do an Avengers Christmas Carol where Thanos is visited by the spirits of 3 people he killed. A Mission Impossible Christmas Carol where Ethan Hunt must do 3 crazy impossible stunts in the past, present, and future. He doesn't actually have to change his ways. He's perfect like he is already. He just wears a Santa hat through the movie. We can have a Star Trek Christmas Carol that's very meta, where Alex Kurtzman, Akiva Goldsman, and J.J. Abrams all have to answer for what they did to the franchise. A Godzilla Christmas Carol, where Mothra, Christmas Past, Jet Jaguar, Christmas Present, and Destroya, Christmas Future, try to reform the heartless monster. A Fast and Furious Christmas Carol, where Vin Diesel's co-workers try to make him less of a controlling dick and rediscover the fun the series once had. A Terminator Christmas Carol, in which the Terminator tries to kill John Connor at 3 points in his timeline. It's very loose with the continuity in the Christmas Carol thing, but Arnold does wear a Santa hat and make Christmas puns. A Harry Potter Christmas Carol, where the cast of the original movies visit various adult Harry Potter fans still clinging to nostalgia to make them reckon with J.K. Rowling's actual words and actions so that they finally abandon the series. A Lord of the Rings Christmas Carol, where Denethor is visited by 3 spirits and is convinced to finally let Gondor celebrate the birth of Christ. I could keep going. The point is, we need more of these every single year until Hollywood just gets sick of franchises altogether.
I love this idea, absolutely. I like the idea of this. Like, we have to have one of them has to make a fucking Christmas movie. I mean, I want, instead of just the Mission Impossible Christmas Carol, I want like the Mission Impossible version of the Nativity story where Ethan Hunt is baby Jesus. You have like Ving Rhames, and all the supporting characters come in as they're the wise men, but at the end, he rips off the baby face and it's actually full adult Ethan Hunt the entire time. He's gone rogue.
Yeah, we could do a lot. By the way, with the Godzilla joke, I literally pulled up a list of like other Godzilla monsters, and I was looking, and I was like, Mothra is clearly Christmas Past. I liked Destroya as Christmas Future, because does Destroya kill Godzilla? Is that right? Or is that a different?
Well, Destroya doesn't kill Godzilla. I mean, so Destroya is like the oxygen destroyer basically made manifest as a biological creature that fights Godzilla. Yeah. It seems like he's going to kill him. But the problem is that version of Godzilla, which is the Heisei era Godzilla, well, you see the nuclear energy in his body is going out of control. And so he's at the threat of a nuclear meltdown. So at the end of that movie, he's fighting Destroya. He's getting hurt. And baby Godzilla, or Godzilla Jr., also gets really badly hurt by Destroya, and all the humans are trying to cool Godzilla's body temperature down, because if it gets too high, he's going to have a nuclear meltdown. And it seems like he's going to be fine. He ends up killing Destroya, but then the nuclear meltdown happens anyways, but because of the cold and freezing stuff that they put on him, it doesn't end up exploding, but he does literally melt down and seemingly is dead. But then, mysteriously, in the fog, in the mist, in the ice left behind, you hear a distant roar, and you see a light shine through, and that light forms a similar silhouette, a very familiar one, and everyone looks in shock and awe and horror. Could it be? Is Godzilla still alive? And that's how that movie ends.
All right, Sean, that is exactly why I thought Destroya should be the Ghost of Christmas Future. That's exactly what I had on my mind. And then I picked Jet Jaguar just because as I was looking through the list, he has a goofy smile on his face, and I thought, you know what? That's Christmas present right there. He's the Absolutely. Goofy guy.
The Jet Jaguar from Godzilla Singular Point is voiced by Kugumi Rie. There's your fun fact for the day.
Well, and she can be in this movie. All right, so there we go. Number 3, I think we need to rebrand Santa for our age of widespread economic inequality. Per the new Santa myth, St. Nicholas is now a Robin Hood figure who steals from the 0.01% and gives to everyone else in order of greatest need. Santa's workshop is now a staging center for many elaborate heists he stages with the elves to steal cash, assets, real estate, and possessions from figures like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and other assorted friends of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a whole host of pictures you can just look through for his targets.
I know, exactly. Just start there and then work on down. But yeah, that's what that Santa is now. The gifts you get under the tree from Santa are stolen from rich assholes. That is the myth. That is, we will make movies about this. This is how it'll go.
I mean, it does, I think, it obviously is good for the social, like, distribute the wealth idea. It does mean you might get some weird, fucked up presents sometimes, though. It's like, what's this just, like, insane, like, gold statue Jeff Bezos had made of himself that all of a sudden is under your Christmas tree one night?
Well, I also imagine that what Santa can do is bring that stuff back to the workshop, melt it down, use the gold to buy people, fun toys and stuff, right? Yeah. But the point is we steal from the rich and give to the poor, and Santa's main tunic will now be green, but he'll keep the red hat, so we have the Robin Hood, but also the classic Santa iconography.
Yeah, and he has to have a jolly bow and arrow.
Yes. All right, number 2. Sean, do you remember, well, maybe you don't, because I don't know if this was a thing in your house, but when we were kids, everybody had the fucking Rankin Bass VHS set that had the exact 4 same specials, and these were the ones you saw every year.
Yeah.
And they were Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, and the one that nobody ever watched or took out of its case, The Little Drummer Boy. And those were the 4. And every Christmas you watched 3 of those, and you never got around to The Little Drummer Boy, but you had those 4, and those were the Christmas classics, right?
Yeah, pum 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 pum.
Pum-pum-pum-pum. We need 4 new canonical Christmas specials that will replace these 4 new versions of them. So here's what I have suggested. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which if you don't remember is basically an origin story for Santa. That will now be about our new Saint Nick, who comes into class consciousness in a French Revolution style scenario, where they play a sort of Robespierre role, although with a much happier ending. Instead of going crazy and starting the Reign of Terror, he gets a bunch of elves and goes to the North Pole, for whatever reason.
I like this. Like, Santa learns politics.
Yes.
That sounds very good.
He definitely chops off some heads. The workshop will now have the heads of various bourgeoisie that he has chopped off in the guillotine.
I couldn't ask for anything more.
Rudolph will be mostly the same, because that special fucking rocks. Everybody loves it. But now, on that foggy night, Rudolph, with his nose so bright, will help Santa and the reindeer burn down a Tesla factory. Also, Yukon Cornelius, who is the miner who just loves gold and silver, he learns to renounce silver, gold, and materialism altogether and devotes himself to fighting on the front lines for the proletariat.
Good, yes. I mean, it's what we need, is we need good young soldiers to, we need that young blood to fuel our fight.
Frosty the Snowman will now be redone as a horror short film with a Twilight Zone-esque plot about a little boy who thinks his snowman has come to life, but to the outside world it simply appears he is insane. Until one by one, citizens of his small Midwestern town start dying, surrounded by puddles of cold water.
Do we ever find out, or is it left ambiguous whether it is Frosty?
It's ambiguous.
Okay, good. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to wonder: is it this boy? Is he setting it up all on his own? Is he just melting shit on the floor to make it look like it's a snowman?
I'm imagining an ending like Terror at 30,000 Feet, where, you know, William Shatner is carted away in the mental institute, in like the asylum van, but with this little kid, yeah.
Yeah, or if we want to make it less ambiguous, we could make it very Psycho. And it's just like you find out at the end that it looks like it's a snowman, but really it's just the boy, and he's piled himself full of snow.
Yeah.
And it starts to melt. And then you can just have that great last shot of Psycho where Norman Bates looks up into the camera and he smiles, and it's like superimposed with the skull of his mother. But you do that and he smiles, and it's superimposed with the head of Frosty the Snowman.
The Little Drummer Boy will not change because no one ever watched it before, and no one's about to start watching it now. Parum-pa-pum-pum.
I don't even know what it's about.
Well, I mean, it's the story of the... It's a Bible story, but yes. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, it could be. I don't know.
Number 1. Christmas in July. That's always been a popular phrase in the public imagination, right? You see it in shops and sales. There's another Rankin Bass film, Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. I think we should add a Christmas in July. But this will be a secular, non-denominational Christmas, where instead of celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ and the glorious class struggle of communist hero Kris Kringle, we instead celebrate the life of French chemist Louis Pasteur and the miracle of vaccination. Specifically, we will celebrate this on July 6th, the date Pasteur first administered a successful rabies vaccination to a human, 13-year-old Joseph Meister, after the boy was attacked by a rabid dog. Pasteur, who is also regarded as one of the fathers of germ theory and for the invention of the vaccines for anthrax and cholera, will be our Santa figure. Because if you go look at like his Wikipedia picture, he did also have a big beard, and I think he can just be our Santa. But mainly, we clearly need to elevate vaccination in the public consciousness as good, virtuous, and celebratory. Thus, as Christmas in December celebrates the miracle of God's love for humanity, Christmas in July will celebrate the greatest medical accomplishments of mankind itself, and maybe knock some fucking sense into people. We can still have all the shopping, all the sales, all the gift giving, all the pomp and circumstance, basically bribe people with retail therapy into celebrating the miracle of vaccines and modern science. I think it just might work.
Yes, I don't know what name I was expecting to come up, but I wasn't expecting probably the greatest microbiologist of all time. But hey, if it should be anyone, it should be fucking him. Yes,
Sean, I was looking at things that happened in human history in July, and I saw the vaccination of Joseph Meister by Louis Pasteur, the first successful rabies vaccination, and I went, "That's our Christmas. That is our Christmas in July." And as an addendum to this, we will also be remaking Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July film that now tells the story of the duo arriving in a small Texas town with a measles outbreak and encouraging the yokels to get their fucking vaccines. And it will end with Rudolph and Frosty leaving RFK Jr. stranded on an ice floe in the middle of the Arctic.
No, I thought it was going to be a darker thing where, you find out that Frosty's an anti-vaxxer, and he's just like absolutely adamant anti-vaxxer, and Rudolph never realized that. And then eventually Frosty gets measles, and his case becomes very complicated, and he dies at the end of the movie, realizing how he's been wrong his whole life, but that it's been too late, and that Rudolph then takes that message with him and passes it on to the world. That this is what happens if you disregard science and public health.
Maybe that can be our new little drummer boy, and he's parum-pa-pum-pumming about the gift of vaccination. Maybe we can make a new little drummer boy.
There we go.
Yeah. Sean, because it's Christmas, I did come up with a couple extras. One of them, and it's the longest spiel I wrote for this before cutting it because I just realized it was me doing therapy in my notes app, was I just wrote, "No more Christmas trees." And it was all about my deep-seated childhood trauma of putting up the fucking tree and how much I hate it, and how even now as an adult, when I make sure I am busy whenever my mom is putting up the Christmas tree because I don't want to deal with it anymore, it still stresses me out. It stresses me out to see it. It stresses me out to think about it. No more Christmas trees. I had a whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's honestly just sad at a certain point, but there you go.
I mean, I can second it. I'm not into the Christmas tree thing. All it is a source of labor for myself around the holiday season. So yeah, I'll back it up.
My final extra one, a little gift to you guys, is the production of a new Home Alone movie. But the new Home Alone movie is also secretly a Saw crossover about a young John Kramer whose traps for the burglars are even more absurdly deadly than Kevin McAllister's and result in a shocking and offensive amount of death and dismemberment. Disney does not currently own the rights to Saw, but they will at some point. And then we get Home Alone X Saw, A New Beginning.
Or it could be that it is just Kevin all grown up, and this is what he's turned into. His love for justice.
We could do that,
his
yeah.
desire for revenge against,
Yeah.
constantly being left home on fucking Christmas, and what has my family done to me, and the trauma of that, and he just turns it to vigilante justice.
I just want to hear a Christmassy rendition of the Saw theme, that great piece of music that plays whenever we reveal this twist at the end. I want that. I want Billy the puppet in a Santa hat. I think we need a Saw Christmas movie, and Home Alone is basically a Saw Christmas movie, just no one gets their limbs chopped off yet.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
So, Sean, did I do a good job? Is this what you wanted?
Yes, you had a much more optimistic version of optimistic is a weird word, but a positive changing one. My head was one of the most cynical, fucked up version of Christmas. That you took it in how can we use Christmas as the launching point for the revolution? And I'll back that. I like that.
Okay. Yeah, it's the holiday season. I want to stay positive. These are things that would better our society and annoy some really awful people. So yes. I think they're good. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Sean, I've got a challenge for you for January for our first episode of 2026.
All right.
I want you to tell me the top 10 things that we could do to make the podcast more popular in 2026 that you and I would both absolutely fucking hate. Things that would make us just miserable to do, but would absolutely bring us greater success as podcasters.
Okay, so the top 10 things that we could do to make the podcast more popular in 2026 that would make us fucking miserable.
Yes, okay. That we would hate to do, but would make us successful. How could we sell out, basically?
Yes.
In a way that hurts our souls, not just our reputations.
Okay, I've already got some ideas rattling in the back of my head. I could come up with. I think this will be a good experiment. And who knows? Maybe we can do some of them, and we can rank in the fucking cash at the expense of our morality and our good consciousness. I mean, I'm not opposed to it.